Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 21st part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 107, Girls' Night. It was finally time for Girls' Night. That's right, everyone was here. Mina, Sue, Achiko, Jiro, Toru, Momo, Eri, Kei, Kiba, Amai Sansan, Kyoko, Shiruku, Yanda, Nara, and even Fuku, over video call. Because while Fuku had gotten better at being around more people, being around this many people was still a nope for her. They all gathered in one of the formerly empty rooms in the house that Izuku had modified specifically for Girls' Night and future Girls' Nights. The room had been painted red and pink and given a very comfortable carpet. There was a closet filled with sleeping bags, a huge TV, and a bunch of other things for nightly activities. So is it time to talk about boys? Shiruku started off eagerly. What boys? Most of us never go outside to meet boys that aren't our brothers. Yanda pointed out. Achiko, Jiro, and Amai are in denial and aren't getting out of it anytime soon. Sue couldn't care less. Momo's so pure and sheltered I doubt she's even had a crush before. Mina and Toru are so in love with other people's love lives that Mina hasn't even noticed the guy who has a serious crush on her. Wait, what? Mina's eyes went wide. Someone's crushing on me. Who? I'm not telling you. Yanda deadpanned. But hopefully, that'll get the ball rolling. That poor boy's going to need all the support he can get for the Herculean task he's taken on. You kids have crazy advanced vocabulary. Toru pointed out. Of course, we do. It makes us sound smarter. Yanda said, looking annoyed. Now can we please not talk about romance? Geez girl, why do you sound so bitter? Toru asked. Because when you listen to people's thoughts, you hear things that no person should ever hear. And when I hit puberty my life is going to suck so much. And I'd really rather not think about future relationships. Yanda answered, shivering in fear as she imagined her teen years. Fair enough, let's talk about something else, Achiko said swiftly. Because she too didn't want to talk about romance. She knew where that conversation would go. Oh come on, we can't just not talk about romance at least a little bit, Toru whined. Maybe instead of talking about boys we're into, we can talk about what kind of people we'd be interested in? And we can skip Yanda since she doesn't want to talk about it. That's still just talking about romance. Achiko groaned, desperately hoping for a change of topic. Well, the only fair way to decide this is with democracy. Mina decided. All in favor of talking about this raise your hand. Mina, Toru, Shiruku, and surprisingly Kyoko raised their hands. All against? Mina asked, a little disappointed by the lack of hands raised. Achiko, Yanda, and Jiro raised their hands. Alright, 4 beats 3. Mina cheered. Ugh. All three girls were against this internally groaned. I feel that at the very least, we shouldn't make Jiro or Achiko talk about this if they really are that against this, Momo told her. Oh fine. Mina pouted for a second before giving Momo a mischievous grin. Well, then you go first, Momo. Ha! Momo was a bit taken aback by the suddenness in which Mina thrust this on her. What would I look for in a romantic partner? Well, as Yanda assumed, I have never had a serious romantic interest in anyone before. And I haven't given such things any serious thought. But off the top of my head, I suppose I would like it if my romantic partner were, how do I put this, more independent. I would prefer a relationship where myself and this partner wouldn't have issues maintaining a healthy relationship while also being apart from each other and doing things independent of each for long periods. Of course, we would still frequently contact each other and support each other, but we wouldn't feel the need to constantly be in each other's presence. Opposite. I want hugs. Sansan said, as she then wrapped herself around Achiko. Achiko laughed a little as she felt Sansan embrace her. I guess Sansan would want a relationship that's a lot more intimate. She'd probably be the kind of girl to glomp her partner whenever possible. Sansan nodded, giving her a bright grin.
Hey, Sansan, I was wondering. Since you're made of, are you into boys or girls? Shiruku asked, surprising everyone by how suddenly and nonchalantly she asked it.
Sansan thought about that for a minute, making a cartoon finger and bringing it to her mouth, before making a question mark appear over her head and shrugging.
I dunno.
Wait, what is Sansan made of? Amai asked, looking extremely confused. I don't think your parents would appreciate us telling you, Sue answered bluntly.
Also, it makes sense that you haven't really had time to figure that out, Sansan.
After all, you haven't had much exposure to other people. Maybe we should go outside more, Nara said absent-mindedly.
No thanks.
Fuku, Kyoku, and Kiba said sharply. I have no need to look for a partner. Kiba continued, shaking her head as she folded her arms.
Either it'll happen or it won't. I don't really care.
As long as I have my family, I don't need much else.
Oh no, I'm having a cute attack.
Toru shouted as she clutched her chest and dramatically fell to the floor.
Just, too precious. Mina choked, doing the same thing. Anyway, guess I'll go next. Azui volunteered. I'm not really in a rush to be in a relationship. But if I was to find someone, I would like them to be dependable. Someone I can work with really easily, and have at my side without having to worry about them. I'd also like them to be good with kids.
Oh?
Sue's gonna be a family woman, huh? Mina said teasingly. Always have been, really.
My parents have always been pretty busy, so most of the time, I've been the one who's had to take care of my younger siblings.
Sue explained.
So I've been basically acting like a mom for most of my life. So in the future when I have kids, I'd like my spouse to be pulling their weight.
Sue ain't gonna take no slackers.
Toru joked.
Darn right, Sue said bluntly, going along with the joke.
Hey Shiruku, what's your ideal partner? Kei asked the spider girl curiously.
Me? Well, I don't really want much out of a partner. I'd prefer someone creative. If they could draw, that would be wonderful. Specifically, I'd like them to have an eye for detail, and a decently high standard. Not a perfectionist necessarily, but not a perfectionist.
But I don't want them to be annoying about it, or just unwilling to compromise. I'd also like them to be very affectionate, always willing to give out hugs, but respectful of when I want to be alone.
I don't want them to be too loud. I wouldn't mind if they were mute actually, they don't need to be, but I would personally see that as a plus. I'd like them to be calm and reasonable. And of course, they'd need to have an iron stomach to handle my cannibalism issue. Honestly speaking, I wouldn't mind if they didn't do much, so long as I enjoy working with them, and we make great art together. I thought you said you didn't want much? Kei asked, looking confused. Is that a lot to ask? Shiruko responded, looking equally confused. Girl knows what she wants. Can't blame her for that. Toru said, giving Shiruko an invisible high five. I wish I was like that. I have no idea what I'd want out of a partner. Fuku shyly admitted. Not that anyone would want to date Fuku. Oh dear sister, I'm sure there are many people who would love to be in a romantic relationship with you, Kiba told her kindly. You can write, draw, paint, cook, and even sew. You have so many good traits, and if anyone says otherwise, I will bludgeon them to death. Please don't. Achiko, Sue, Momo, and Fuku all said simultaneously. I mean, I guess those are good. But I don't think those are good enough traits to look over my quirk. Fuku said, with a saddened expression. Wait, what's her quirk? Amai asked. She releases a gas that makes you experience your worst nightmare while you're awake, Kiba explained casually like it was no big deal. Oh. Amai seemed shocked for a moment, before laughing a little. You know you guys are all so friendly, I forget you could subject me to a fate worse than death. Yeah, you get over that surprisingly quickly. Toru agreed. But that is gonna make it a little hard to find someone, Amai admitted. But don't worry.
One day I'm sure you'll find someone who can look past how scary your quirk is. They may even find the scary part of you attractive. Speaking from experience? Shiruku asked her cheekily, causing Amai to turn red. What about you, Toru? Sue said, taking the attention off poor Amai. What do you want in a partner? Oh, Toru thought about the question, trying to find the answer she had surely thought of by now. And never did. I told you. She's too in love with other people's love lives. Yonda restated. I mean, she's not wrong, Toru admitted. I'm not really the most noticeable person around, so I don't really think about it too much. I mean, it's hard to be attractive when you are literally invisible. Believe me, people can still find invisible people attractive. Yonda told her, grimacing a bit as she recalled some of the thoughts she'd heard about Toru. Wait, really? Toru asked, no doubt wearing a shocked expression that no one could see, leaning towards Yonda. Oh yeah. Big time. Let's just say, sometimes not knowing what people look like makes them more attractive. Yonda explained. People have very active imaginations. Oh, I see, because they don't know what she looks like, they can imagine anything they want and lay those fantasies onto Toru, Momo explained. It's somewhat like Schrodinger's cat. Hear that, Toru, you're Schrodinger's waifu. Mina giggled, teasing Toru a bit. I am not sure how to feel about that, Toru answered honestly. It was a bit weird to think that people imagined what she could look like, and then got attracted to that, and imprinted that image of an imaginary girl onto her, then got attracted to her. I mean, at least people don't think I'm ugly? That's a plus? Definitely a plus, Nara told her, crossing her arm. Boys mostly care about looks, even if the girl's personality is crap. I remember one time Ken went out with this one girl, and she was just awful. She was controlling, manipulative, and she had this weird thing with dogs. She really only liked Ken in his Blitzwolfer form, and even when he was in his normal form, she treated him like a dog. And Ken just went along with it because she was cute. I only managed to convince him to break up with her when she started insisting he wear a collar. Wow, that girl knew what her kinks were way too early. Mina thought. I'm guessing you're not into simps then? Kiba asked her, causing Mina and Toru to almost burst out laughing at hearing a little girl say simp. Not really, no. I don't really care about being in a relationship, I'd rather just focus on school and work. Nara explained broadly. Maybe one day when I've got everything in order, I'll get interested in relationships. I can definitely respect that. Jiro nodded. Also, are you guys bored of this yet? Because I am. But we still haven't heard from Eri, Kei, or Kyoko, Mina argued. I don't really want to be in a relationship. Kyoko said curtly. Me neither. Eri shook her head. I just want someone who likes my snakes, Kei explained simply. There they talked, can we just move on? Jiro asked, sounding very annoyed. Mina pouted. Fine. What are we gonna talk about? I have an idea. Amai said, before turning to Kiba. Lady Kiba. How did the Wanna videos do? How did everyone respond? Kiba gave them all a wide, prideful smile, and held her head up high. Well, I am pleased to say that the videos have done extraordinarily well. People from all over the world are interested to see what the students from the world's best hero school are capable of, and that attention has not only served the videos, but they've also brought attention to myself. Thanks to you all, my minion count has increased rapidly. That's great. You already had like 2 million subscribers, how much is it now? Amai asked. 5 million and counting. Kiba proclaimed proudly. What? Shouted Mina, Toru, Amai, and Fuku in shock, although most of the other girls seemed pretty surprised as well. That's insane. Toru shouted. Yeah, that's 3 million more people. Kei said, taking a second to make sure her math was correct. All that just from us? Mina asked in surprise. I mean, I get that we're awesome, but geez.
It's not too surprising if you think about it, Sue spoke up. Kiba's channel has a lot of appeals. She's an OPC which a lot of people are curious about now thanks to Midoriya. She's, and everyone that normally features on her channel are extremely powerful. She's the only channel that features UA students from the hero course, and she's also just really cute and fun to watch. I am not cute. I am fearsome and beautiful. Kiba huffed. Sorry, she's beautiful, and fun to watch. Sue corrected. I'd be surprised if she doesn't get to 20 million eventually. 20 million. Put. Everyone in the entire world will one day become my minion. Soon all will kneel before me. Ahahaha. Kiba laughed manically. Hail, Lady Kiba. Amai, Mina, Toru, and Fuku cheered. Hail Lady Kiba. Achiko and Sue joined in, with big grins on their faces. Hail Lady Kiba. Kei joined in as well, just going along with it. Kiba's ego aside, what do people think about 1A? Shiruku asked. The whole reason we filmed those was to make people like 1A more so they'd buy the game. Well, I think it worked pretty well, Kiba explained. Opinions on Ojiro have increased greatly, and people can actually remember his name now. The same goes for Shiro. People have been moderately impressed with Sato, Shoji, Jiro, and Aoyama. Although people have been a bit disappointed in Kaminari because of how limited his quirk is. They are quite fond of Mina, not just because of her quirk, of how she uses it in style. Hee. Nice. Mina said, patting herself on the back. They're also really impressed with you too, Sue, Kiba told the frog girl. People weren't expecting someone with a frog quirk to be so capable. Never underestimate a frog, Sue told them. They look cute, but they are deadly predators. Aha! Lots of them look really cool and colorful. But they have super deadly poison. Kei said, excitedly jumping into the convection. I learned that in a book. Sue pet the snakes on her head, causing Kei to giggle as her snakes gave off a pleasing hiss. People are also rather fond of Ida. After the How Fast Can Ida Go video, Kiba continued. Which is good because that video was an absolute pain to get right. Many people also like Kirishima's attitude, more so than his quirk. Of course, Tokoyami and Todoroki are some of the more talked about members of your class. People are quite enamored with their power. But, when it comes to the most talk about member of your class, no one comes close to Achiko. Ha? Me? Achiko asked, soundingly slightly surprised. Am I really that much more popular? Well duh. Mina said. You're one of the 4 strongest people in class. And out of you, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Tokoyami, you're the most approachable. Yeah, not gonna lie, it's kind of hilarious how out of place you are with those 4. Jiro pointed out with a very amused smirk. Those 3 look like they're from an emo rock band, and then we have a cheery-looking marshmallow girl just vibing. Marshmallow girl? Achiko scoffed, looking slightly offended. What does that mean? I don't know, you just look soft. Jiro shrugged. Not like fat or anything, obviously you're ripped as heck, it's just when I look at you it feels like I'm looking at someone made of marshmallows and cotton candy. You just look soft. Like a pillow. Well, we gotta test that now. Mina stood up and looked down at Achiko with a mischievous gleam in her eyes, and her arms in front of her, aimed at Achiko. Everyone. Time for a group hug. Wait. Guys, not all at AC. Achiko didn't have time to get her words out, as Mina dived on top of her. Toru jumped in, and then Kei, and then Sansen, then Shiruku, then Kiba, and lastly Kyoku. Yep. Can confirm. Nice and huggable. Mina giggled. Alright. That's enough. Achiko said, before activating One for All. Full cowling. 10%. Achiko then started to rise up, everyone else falling off her as their combined weight was nothing compared to her strength. See what we mean?
Mina asked as she and everyone got off the ground after sliding off Achiko. You're a powerhouse. It really shouldn't be surprising that you're attracting this much attention, Sue told her bluntly. All that power and a friendly face. It kind of reminds me of All Might. Achiko went stiff for a minute, not expecting that sudden comparison that hit a bit too close to the truth for her liking. Hey, Kiba, I just noticed you didn't tell us what people thought of Toru. Yonda pointed out, quickly changing the topic for Achiko's sake. Oh right. My apologies. Kiba said to Toru. Although, unfortunately, I can't say people are talking about you that much. I'm kinda used to that. Don't worry about it, Lady K, Toru told her. Hey, are we gonna watch some movies or what? Jiro asked. Yeah. Let's do that. Achiko said, quickly grabbing the remote, and quickly turning it on, trying to keep everyone from continuing to speak on this topic. Fortunately, it worked, and the rest of the night was spent watching movies and eating snacks. And most importantly, enjoying each other's company. Chapter 108, Performance Review. Alrighty, then Aoyama. Let's get this review started. Izuku said, staring at the blonde-haired boy in front of him. It was time, Izuku decided, for a performance review. Izuku figured that since 1A's time here was swiftly coming to an end, he should inform them of how well they'd been doing. Perhaps it was a bit early considering they still had a little over half a week left, but Izuku figured that nothing super significant would happen in that short amount of time. And so the two sat in Izuku's office. Izuku was behind his desk with Aoyama sitting in front of it, ready to discuss this matter. I am glad you are no one for wasting time, Mr. Midoriya. Truly you are a magnifique man. Aoyama complimented. I do hope my performance was to your liking. I tried my very hardest. Well, it shows, Izuku said, giving him a fake smile. Aoyama was going to be the hardest out of everyone to review. Considering he was the traitor in all. Because after that revelation came to light, Izuku couldn't look at Aoyama or his actions the same way again. He began to interpret anything he did as either a sign of suspicion or a call for help. Obviously, he couldn't let Aoyama know that, or even suspect it, so he had to fake it until he made it. You've done everything we've asked of you without complaint. And you haven't had any major incidents like Todoroki or Mina. Izuku summarized. Overall, a very solid performance. Aoyama did a little bow. Thank you very much, Monsieur Midoriya. I am glad my efforts have borne fruit. Well, you've been a great help, and we've been glad to have you, Izuku said, offering his hand, which Aoyama shook. Now, I don't want to take up any more of your time, you're free to go. Aoyama bowed, and swiftly took his leave. After Aoyama left, Izuku waited for a few seconds. Is he gone? Yes, father. He's gone. Yonda, who'd been under the desk the whole time, confirmed. He didn't suspect anything throughout the whole interview, father. Your performance fooled him completely. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goddess. Thank you, Yonda. Now please go hide in my room. It might be suspicious for you to leave here right after Aoyama. Of course, father. Yonda said, getting out from under Izuku's desk and giving him a polite curtsy, with a huge grin on her face. I'm very glad that you utilized me for this task. I love it when my abilities are put to good use. Izuku sighed. He still really didn't want to involve her in this more than he needed to, but it was very important that Aoyama not suspect they knew he was a traitor, and since no one could see what was under his desk unless they were sitting where he was, this was relatively risk-free. Although it still encouraged her to get more into this matter than he'd like. Don't worry, father. Once Aoyama leaves, my part to play in this will be over. Yonda reassured him. Izuku sighed. I hope that's the case, Yonda. I really do. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Well, Ashido, your performance here was almost perfect, Izuku said to the pink girl, who was now sitting in front of him as Aoyama had before. Honestly, I would have said you'd have the best performance here.
If it weren't for the candy thing, Mina said, blushing with embarrassment.
Yeah, not my best moment.
Yeah. Izuku sighed. However, considering I didn't have the foresight to impose any regulations or rules on the candies and their usage, I'm going to take responsibility for this incident and put it aside while speaking about your overall performance.
Mina frowned at that.
She didn't like that Izuku was blaming himself for something that was clearly her fault, but there was little she could do to convince him otherwise.
She could only hope this therapist would help Izuku out of his self-deprecating habits. Now, overall you've been a very big help in increasing morale around the house. Izuku continued.
You've worked to make sure everyone here has been in good spirits and kept all the kids busy with some fun activities. And most of the kids love you for it, and the ones that don't generally still like you at the very least.
Except for Yanda. Izuku thought. And Ken.
Well, these kids have had enough of being sad, don't you think?
Mina asked him with a smile that just emitted positive vibes, which made Izuku smile back. Yes. I completely agree. Izuku nodded.
But back to the review, of course, there was the Kyoku incident.
Your work there was simply spectacular.
I am extremely grateful for you comforting her as you did, and allowing her to open up to you, and by extension, revealing some very important things to us, which is another reason I'm so willing to look past the candy thing.
Well, I have my upsides and downsides, Mina said. On one hand, I'm a really positive, feel-good gal. On the other hand, I'm kinda dumb.
Izuku wanted to argue against her calling herself dumb, but he couldn't find it within himself to lie to her at the moment. Moving on to your potential employment, I see no real reason to not employ you, Izuku told her. Even acknowledging your mistake with the candies, you're still a very kind-hearted person, who lifts the spirits of those around her, and applied for the job out of a genuine desire to make my children happy. And most importantly, I can be sure you're not secretly an assassin.
Honestly, that's the most important part here.
Given that someone with substantial influence and resources has been out to kill me, and gone to great lengths to try. I still can't believe someone hates you so much just because you're quirkless, Mina muttered in disgust.
It's unfortunate, but until we can apprehend the people responsible for those attacks, the number one thing I have to look for out of employees is that they won't try to kill me or take the kids, Izuku told her. This was true for both employees he'd hired before. Sori, while she did leave a bad first impression, has had a history that had been recorded since she was born. He knew more about her than would like, and thus he knew she wouldn't try and kill him. Sai's history was less documented, but she was a pro-hero, and while Endeavor proved that shouldn't give you a free pass, she at the very least, seemed to be a better person than Endeavor, who always seemed kinda off, and she willingly left the glamorous hero life behind for moral reasons, so that had to say something about her trustability. Chol was American, so unless his assassins were an international power, which she doubted, they would have nothing to do with her. Not to mention Star and Stripe vouched for her, and All Might vouched for her, so really he didn't have much reason not to trust her. And now Mina.
She'd been in the house for this long and hadn't tried to kill him, and Yanda, despite disliking her, never suspected her of being an assassin. And given how Yanda was, if she didn't suspect her at all, then it was probably a good sign that she was innocent. Now, I believe it would be a good time to discuss the terms of your employment, Izuku said, taking out a contract that he'd drafted not too long ago, that was about as thick as someone's finger.
I'm not gonna have to read all that, am I? Mina asked nervously. Izuku gave her an apologetic smile. It's best if you did.
Ugh, hi.
Mina groaned as she gazed at the contract.
The next hour was going to be very, very boring.
XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. So Azui. Izuku started. Call me Tsu. Tsu reminded him. It was now her turn in front of Izuku's desk.
And she was confident she'd done well during her time here.
Right. Tsu. Izuku stuttered a bit, before regaining his professional composure.
So, you've done a wonderful job during your time here.
Both in assisting in the children's education, and in playing with them. I think you might be one of Kiba's favorites. I'm happy to hear that,
Sue responded. Speaking honestly, when I heard about you doing all this, I thought you were a little insane. But after working with all these children, I can start to see your logic a bit better. I haven't seen kids smile at me like this since my siblings were littler. But seeing this many children smile and laugh, after knowing all they've been through, it's an amazing feeling. It really is. Izuku had a look of pure elation on his face, at hearing someone say what he'd been feeling for so long. This job is its own reward. Right. I still think you're way in over your head, Sue admitted. Taking on something like this, at 15. But I have to respect what you do, and for the most part how you've handled it. Excluding the waiting until you collapse to hire employees part. Yeah. Izuku let out a long sigh. Speaking of which, I'd like to talk to you about maybe volunteering here every now and then, Sue offered. I don't think I could take a dedicated job position here. I just don't think I have the time. But I'd still like to help around here every once in a while. That'd be great, Izuku responded. You're welcome to come here anytime you'd like. Thank you, Sue said. I look forward to working with you in the future, Karo. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Are you okay, Ida? You seem a bit stiff? Izuku asked the class rep, who was sitting opposed to him. I'm fine. Just slightly nervous, Ida admitted, trying to get somewhat comfortable in his chair. I fear that perhaps my performance could be lacking. What? No, Izuku told him firmly. Why would you think that? You've done a fantastic job interacting with the children. In particular, you've done good work preventing them from doing anything stupid. Like that time with Netsu and the fridge, or the time they tried to use Sanson as a slingshot to play real-life Angry Birds. Yes, it is alarming how many ridiculous ideas these children have, Ida said, his voice full of worry. And unfortunately, I can't stop all of them. No one can. Not really, Izuku reassured him. These kids are very chaotic, and their quirks play into that. Combine that with having a playground the size of an entire forest, and it's impossible to keep track of them all. And it's only going to get harder when there are even more of them. That sounds extremely tiring. Ida almost shivered at the thought of trying to maintain order with that many overly powerful children running around causing trouble. Taking on this responsibility has given me a greater appreciation for the amount of work you have to do to give these children a future. I can't comprehend the amount of fortitude it would require to do all this on your own. Thank you, Ida. I try my hardest, Izuku told him. Now, back to your performance review. As I said, you did a good job keeping the kids safe from themselves. You also did a great job teaching the kids during sparring. Particularly that lesson you gave Kiba and Nara about pacing themselves, very important. Yes. Making sure not to exhaust yourself before you achieve your goal is a key element in not only running, but general hero work as well, Ida stated. I'm glad I had the chance to impart such knowledge to them during my time here. As am I, Izuku agreed. You've done everything we've asked of you, and more. I'd say your performance here was spectacular. Thank you for your praise, Midoriya. I value the praise of someone who works this hard for such a benevolent goal, Ida said, getting up and giving him a bow. I don't think my word matters that much, Izuku said, turning red and sheepishly smiling. But, thanks. XXXXXXXXXXXX. So, how did I do? Achiko, casually leaning on the desk, smiling at Izuku. I have a feeling you know, Achiko. Izuku smiled back at her. You're still the favorite among most of the kids in your class. All right. Achiko cheered, raising her arms up in celebration. I'm not losing that title to anyone anytime soon. If you keep visiting, I doubt you will, Izuku said. You have a knack for getting into people's hearts. As soon as Izuku said those words, everything froze. Eh?
Achiko took a second to process those words, her mind trying to judge if he'd really said that, and when she finally took those words in, her face went bright red. For Izuku things went much quicker. As soon he realized those words slipped out of his mouth, his brain realized what he'd done, and his face went just as red.
I meant you're a very friendly person who's nice to be around and gets along with people really well. Izuku added very quickly, trying not to make that sound romantic.
I mean you chosen by All Might to be his successor, and also that has to mean something, right?
Why yeah, I guess I'm pretty likable. Thanks. Ah ha ha.
Achiko awkwardly laughed it off, trying to get rid of the awkward tension in the room, to no avail.
Well, I think I summarized your performance pretty well. You're free to go, Izuku said, even though the meeting had only just started. Thanks. See ya, bye.
Achiko quickly ran out of the room, desperately trying to hide her red face, and heading straight towards wherever she could splash some cold water on her face.
Meanwhile, Izuku just slammed his face onto his desk. Oh ha. WHYYYYYYYY. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX.
After waiting several minutes to calm himself, Izuku moved on to the next person up for review, Ojiro. Now, Ojiro, I have to say, your stay here has been extremely productive, Izuku told him.
The kids are very fond of your martial arts.
I think they're just more amazed that I managed to get this far with such a lame quirk, Ojiro admitted.
Well, I wouldn't say your quirk is lame, it's just not flashy. Izuku consoled him. You've been able to do some pretty cool stuff with it.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to do the best with what I've got. Ojiro shrugged, before looking a bit regretful.
Although I really should stop complaining about my quirk in front of a quirkless guy, huh? Sorry if I was being insensitive.
You're fine, Izuku told him, giving him a reassuring smile. We're both doing the best with what we've got.
I think you're doing a lot more, to be honest, Ojiro told him, before looking around the room.
All this came from one 15-year-old, with nothing to his name.
Not even a quirk. It's pretty amazing. Don't cut yourself short, Izuku retorted. Your quirk doesn't shoot lasers, or let you take down a building, or tank car to the face, or anything like that.
But you took the matter into your own hands and used martial arts to make it more useful.
And with just that, you managed to get into the most exclusive hero school in the world. And in about 3 years, you're gonna be out there on the streets, saving lives. I think that's amazing.
Has this review just turned into two guys complimenting each other? Ojiro asked with a bit of a laugh.
I guess it has, Izuku said, joining in with the laughter. Well, I don't think I have much else to say, you're free to go. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Alright, Kaminari. I'll be honest. I don't recall much of what you've actually done here, Izuku told him. Yeah, that's fair. Kaminari shrugged. I kind of felt like out of everyone I was the least useful here. My quirk's not great for sparing, I don't know how to do much. I think the only thing I did here besides basic chores was teach Ken how to play the guitar, and Jiro did half of that. Well, that's still something. And you did still do the chores without complaint. So it's not like you weren't helping, Izuku reassured him. And don't be too upset about not being super helpful. You were training to be a hero, not a babysitter. So it only makes sense that your skill set might not be super useful here. Huh, guess that makes sense, Kaminari said with a thoughtful expression. Still wished I could have helped out more. After hearing about all the work you've done, would have been nice to lighten your load a bit more. Don't worry about that. Izuku shook his head. All the work I've been doing is stuff only I can do. At least for now. I have a secretary coming in from America. I think I'll be able to trust her with some of the more sensitive documents. From America? Kaminari asked, looking slightly shocked.
I mean nothing against Americans, but why get someone from another country?
I can't tell you that for confidential reasons, but let's just say I have my reasons. Izuku told him,
before swiftly moving to the next topic. But back to what I was saying before, don't underestimate how useful another set of hands can be. You can clean, help deliver meals, carry things, and honestly, that's all I needed from you. Anything else was just extra. So if anything, helping Ken play guitar was just going above and beyond. Ah, you're flattering me too much, dude. Kaminari chuckled. You know, you're a great guy. I just don't get how people could treat you like shit for all those years. Izuku sighed. That's the power of poisonous beliefs. Well, I would have totality stuck up for you, dude, Kaminari told him. Izuku smiled. Thanks. That means a lot. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Alright, well Kirishima, you definitely showed a lot of enthusiasm, Izuku told the red-haired boy across from him. Kirishima was currently bandaged up, after a sparring match with Kiba. Well, I tried my best. Have to go plus ultra with everything. Yeah, although I'm not sure how I feel about you acting like a punching bag for the kids. Izuku winced, as he recalled the various times he'd seen Kirishima have to go to the med bay. Well, I don't really mean to be, but those kids are tough as hell, man, Kirishima responded. They're gonna be crazy when they get into UA. Villains aren't gonna stand a chance. Well, I hope that's the case. Izuku sighed. Honestly, I'm a bit worried. I know they're strong, but as much as I love heroes, and I love the idea of them going out and helping people, the idea of them putting themselves in danger by fighting villains, it scares me. Hey, don't worry, man, these kids are gonna be fine, Kirishima reassured him. Sanson's pretty much unkillable, you can't even fight her unless you have a quirk, she's weak too. Kiba's just way too strong for anyone to handle, and she's only gonna get stronger. Fu and Kaiosei are literally unkillable unless you're freaking Endeavor or something. Kai is an unstoppable Goliath that only Uraraka, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Tokoyami can even fight. Netsu is literally untouchable, he's like the next Endeavor, and once Ken and Nara get a hold of their quirks, they'll be the ultimate Swiss Army knives of heroes. Izuku didn't look convinced. Of course, he knew the kids were strong, most villains wouldn't be able to beat them, even as children, let alone as fully fledged adult pro-heroes. But they were far from invincible. Kiba would get weaker as fights went on. In a prolonged fight against multiple villains, she could get outlasted and fall. Kai was tough, but he was a massive target. He shuddered to think of what would happen if someone like Overhaul got his hands on him. Kai would have no way to dodge. Netsu could easily suffocate himself, leaving him open to attacks if he didn't suffocate himself first. Ken and Nara had time limits, and once those times were reached, they were pretty much helpless. And while Fu and Kaiosei, while hard to kill, could be worn down eventually. Or someone with a strong fire quirk could just destroy them outright. Heck, even Mina could kill them relatively quickly. But the main thing that worried him was All for One. The villain that crippled All Might and seemingly got away. None of his children would stand a chance against that monster. But he didn't doubt they'd still fight him if someone was in danger. It was a thought that filled him with great pride, and even greater fear. Thank you, I feel much better now. Izuku lied, putting on his best fake smile. You're free to go, by the way, thank you for your help. Really? Didn't we just start? Kirishima asked. Well, there wasn't much to through, and there's no need to waste your time, Izuku told him. You're dismissed. Thank you. Kirishima gave him a confused look for a second, before shrugging it off and taking his leave. Alright, see ya later, man. Once Kirishima left, Izuku opened up his drawer and pulled out a calm candy bar, quickly took a bite, and felt his body ease up. You shouldn't worry like that, father, it's bad for your health. Yonda told him. She was still in his room, reading a book, thus could still hear everything going on. Besides, All for One will be handled long before any of my brothers and sisters have to deal with him. All might beat him before, and I'm sure he'll be more through the next time around. And if he can't do it, remember, Achiko's going to be even stronger than him. She'll take him down. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to believe in Achiko and All Might, Izuku told himself. Thank you, Yanda. No problem, father. Now take some time to relax, Yanda told him. Well, first I have to finish this up, Izuku told her. 8 down. Elven to go. Chapter 109, Performance Review Part 2. Well, Kota, I have to say your stay here has been a treat, Izuku told the large boy in front of him. Kota nodded. The poor boy looked horribly uncomfortable and was trying, and failing, to look Izuku in the eye. Kei in particular has really appreciated your presence here. She does love animals, Izuku told him. Kota muttered. Izuku paused and looked at the boy, seeing how horribly uncomfortable he was, and gave him a reassuring smile. You know what? You can go. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Izuku told him. Thanks. I tried my absolute best, you know. Sato smiled. The kids deserve at least a good meal after everything they've been through. Putting aside your cooking, which is amazing by the way, you've also helped out with sparring matches, heavy lifting, and of course, you've taught many of my children how to cook, Izuku told him. And honestly, while Achiko and Mina are the favorites among most the kids, I think you're Fuku's favorite. Which is a big achievement, considering her trust issues. It's an honor. She's a great kid, you know. Always trying to make stuff for her friends. And she's a real hard worker too. Sato told him. Best student I've had, although I haven't really taught anyone cooking before I got here. Well, from what I hear, when Fuku focuses on something, nothing will stop here. I'm actually a bit concerned she might pull a me and overwork herself. Izuku said. I'm sure everyone else won't let that happen, Sato told him. They're all good kids that look out for each other. And after what happened to you, they'll be on high alert with stuff like that. I hope so. Izuku sighed, before refocusing. Well, back to your performance, like I said. You've done an excellent job. And I'm sure the kids will miss you greatly when you leave. I hear your parents run a bakery, I'll have to pay them a visit. You'd love it. My folks are even better at cooking than me. Those kids'll be in for a treat. Sato said. Well, now I definitely have to pay them a visit, Izuku said, before extending his hand out. Well, I think that's all I have to say on the matter. Please continue to the good work while you're still here. And of course, you're always welcome here if you ever wish to pay us a visit. Thanks. I'll keep that in mind. Sato said, shaking his hand. Don't worry, I'll give it my all. XXXXXXXXXXX. Well, Shoji. You've done a good job at moving things around. Izuku told him, trying to come up with things to say. You don't have to force yourself. I know I haven't exactly been a strong presence here. Shoji told him. Anything I've done here could have been done by one of those giant apes. That's not true. They can't clean, or hold anything fragile. Izuku explained. Your quirk makes cleaning the blood and flesh that gets all over the place much easier thanks to you. Out of context, that is a horrifying sentence. Shoji pointed out. Yeah. But that kind of thing happens a lot around here. Izuku sighed. Anyways, don't underestimate your value. Cleaning can be an absolute pain without you. With that said, you're dismissed. XXXXXXXXXXX. So Jiro, you. Izuku tried to think of what Jiro did while she was here. I heard you and Kaminari taught Ken and Otoko how to play instruments. Yeah, it was no big deal. Jiro shrugged. You also helped Sansan with her vibration resistance training. That's great. Izuku added. Vibrations were another one of Sansan's weaknesses. Whatever hydrokinetic ability that allowed Sansan to move her body was rather weak.
Meaning that Sanson could only really move if there was no strong resistance. Meaning things like vibrations, shockwaves, and even strong winds would leave her without control of her body. She was trying to find ways to combat this, which Jiro was a key factor in. I mean, I just stood there and blasted sonic waves at her, still not that big of a deal, dude, Jiro said, casually. Well, I'm sure she appreciates it, Izuku told her. Keep helping her out. Will do, boss, Jiro said slightly sarcastically. Anything else? Not really. Izuku couldn't really find anything else to discuss. You're free to the go. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. So Zero. I'd like to thank you for all taping off restricted areas. That's likely saved me a lot of time and money. Izuku told the odd-elbowed boy. Whenever an area needed to be restricted, normally because it needed to be repaired, Zero would put up his tape around the area, as a sign that no one should enter those areas should be entered without express permission from Izuku. Well, it's the least I could do, you know. Gotta help out where you can. Zero said. I mean, other than this, the swinging training is the only thing of note that I did here. I think the swinging training was very useful. Mobility during a fight, or even during a rescue, can be key. Izuku brought up. Villains can't hurt you if they can't touch you. That's what I'm hoping for, Zero responded, laughing a bit. I'd appreciate it if you could teach them more about using the environment, Izuku told him. It's a very important part of a fight, and there are few people who make use of it better than you. Well, when life gives you lemons. Zero shrugged. Okay, I think that's all I have to say here. Izuku stuck out his hand, which Zero shook. Keep up the good work. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. So how'd we do, boss? Dark Shadow asked, floating up to Izuku, while Tokoyami sat behind him. Well, most of what you've been doing is training with Kiba and Kai, Izuku explained. Izuku wasn't exaggerating. Most of Tokoyami's contribution, besides being another set of hands, was his sparring matches with Kiba and Kai, and those two specifically. This had to do with the fact that Dark Shadow had two issues when it came to being a sparring partner. If the fight took place during the day or in a well-lit area, then really any of the kids could overpower him. However, if it took place during the night or in a poorly lit area, then the kids could be in serious danger, seeing as Tokoyami may not be able to stop Dark Shadow before he does real damage to the kids. The only exceptions to this rule were Sanson, Netsu, Ken in his Heat Blast form, Kiba, and Kai. Sanson, Netsu, and Ken weren't really fights. Dark Shadow couldn't really hurt Sanson, so that was a pointless spar. And Netsu and Ken both beat Dark Shadow really easily. Meaning the only ones who could get anything out of a spar with Dark Shadow was Kai and Kiba. Although he would have Netsu nearby to stop the fight. I apologize that we couldn't be more useful during our time here, Tokoyami said, giving an apologetic bow. Izuku was starting to really get tired of hearing that. It's fine. Getting good sparring partners for Kai is a pain. It's good for Kiba to fight someone above her in strength. She needs experience in that department. Izuku told him. Other than that, another set of hands is always useful. And we have two sets. Dark Shadow said enthusiastically. That's right, Izuku said. Now, I think that's all we needed to go over. You two are free to go. XXXXXXXXXXXX. I want to say again, Todoroki, how sorry I am for what Yonda did, Izuku said to start off the meeting. It's fine. I'm getting over it. Todoroki told him. Now are we going to get onto the review? Well, there's not much to say really. Izuku told him. There was the incident with Kiba, but given you lack of experience with people, and the incident later with Yonda, I'm not going to hold that against you. Other than that, all you did was laundry, which I appreciate, don't get me wrong. I know how painfully long and tedious that can be. But there isn't much to discuss. Alright, in that case, am I free to go? Todoroki asked. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Izuku told him. And once again, thank you for now suing me. I don't think I could. If I told my father about what Yonda did, and that it resulted in me finally using my fire, he'd most likely send you a check. Todoroki said. Well, if you need anything. Anything at all, remember that the Midoriya Foundation owes you a favor. Izuku told him. I'll keep that in mind, Todoroki said, before taking his leave. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Well, Hagakure, you've done a good job at keeping up morale alongside Mina, and helping out during lessons, Izuku told the invisible girl. Well, I try my best. Toru said, repeating the same thing Izuku had been hearing all day. But I really wish I dash. Please don't say you wish you could do more. Izuku slumped onto his desk. I've had to hear that over and over again. You guys did fine. You lightened the load a lot and let me recover from my collapse. Thank you. There was a brief moment of silence, as Toru was stunned by Izuku's sudden outburst. Eventually, however, Izuku picked his head back up. I'm sorry for that, it's just, today has been kind of stressful. I'm not used to being the boss, you could say. And I'm not really used to other people saying things like that. You don't like other people devaluing themselves? Toru asked, raising an invisible eyebrow. Well, imagine how your mom and Uraraka feel. Oh. Right. Izuku realized his hypocrisy. I guess I do say stuff like that a lot too. Is that how they feel when I say it? I really owe both of them an apology. Okay. But a piece of advice, after you apologize, don't keep apologizing. Toru told him. Thank you. Izuku groaned, picking himself up to continue to the review. Overall, you've done a great job, thank you for your help. You're free to go. While that was short, come to think about it, these have all been pretty short, Toru noted. I'll be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing, Izuku admitted. I just figured this was something an employer should do, and tried it out. I don't think it's going too well. Ah, well. At least you're trying. Toru tried to reassure him. And that's what really matters. Thank you, Hagakure. Keep up the good work. Izuku told her. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Izuku and Shinso stared at each other for a while, neither of them knowing what to say for a while. I'm willing to bet you forgot I was here at least a few times, Shinso spoke up. You're not wrong, Izuku admitted. But I guess that's desirable if you want to be an underground hero. Right? Yeah, sounds about right, Shinso responded. And then the silence returned. Shinso is another person whose contribution could be summed up as another pair of hands. And given Shinso's tendency to not stick out, Izuku really did have a hard time remembering he was here. If you're not gonna say anything, I'm just gonna go, Shinso said, getting up to leave. Yeah, that's probably for the best, Izuku told him. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. When I first heard you'd be coming to work here, I was a bit worried, Mineta, Izuku explained. But you've done a great job of keeping your less admirable traits hidden from the children. Well, I tried to stay away from them as much as possible, Mineta admitted with little shame. Can't slip up and let them hear something they shouldn't if they're not around me, to begin with. Well, at least you're aware of it. Izuku sighed. Other than that, you've done a great job helping out with the paperwork. Now, I think we should address the elephant in the room. Mineta winced. Do you mean the gacha thing? Yes, the gacha thing. Izuku deadpanned. As much as I'm not happy about my children getting addicted to gambling, part of me felt like this was inevitable. It only takes one of them to learn about these games before it spreads to the entire house. At the very least, you gave me the chance to nip any bad spending habits in the bud and lay down some ground rules about these games. And give them a good lesson about spending. If anything, I'm less upset about you introducing them to these games and more upset that you didn't give them a proper warning about how these games can affect them. Or at least tell me that you exposed them to this. Well, I didn't really think it was a big deal at the time. Mineta shrugged nervously. Although in hindsight, yeah, probably should have given you a heads up. Sorry. Just think about the consequences of your actions in the future, Izuku advised. Got it, boss. Mineta said. Alright, with that said, you are free to go, Izuku said. XXXXXXXXXXX. So then, Yayarozu, I have to say you have been an enormous help in keeping everything organized, Izuku told the last member of 1A, except technically Bakugo, but he wasn't here. And you've been a massive help in clearing up the paperwork. You've gotten through it as fast as I normally do. It was a shock to see how fast I managed to get through it all, Momo admitted. When I first saw the stack of papers I'd have to work through, I thought it would take me weeks. But after a couple of days, they were done. Unfortunately, they were swiftly replaced with an equally dense pile of papers. Yeah, when you're dealing with an operation as massive as this one, the paperwork never really ends. Izuku sighed. Even on my end with the massively reduced workload you guys afforded me, the papers just kept coming. Ugh. But back to the review, I also have to thank you for helping out with the lesson plans and tutoring, as well as Nara's personal lessons. It means so much to me that these kids are getting a good education. Yes, I was wondering if you had a replacement teacher in mind for when we leave? Momo asked. Well, yes actually, Izuku answered tentatively. I have my eye on someone. They're not someone who'd be expected for me to hire, so I'm more confident that they are not an assassin. However, the reason for them being unexpected is the same reason I'm a bit apprehensive to actually hire them. Are they dangerous? Momo asked, looking a bit worried. I don't think so, Izuku answered, sounding unsure. But they have the potential to be, and I have to find a way to check their intentions before I let them anywhere near the house. Can't you just hire a normal teacher? Momo asked. They sent a child assassin after me, Yayarozu. Izuku reminded her. Whoever is after me wants me dead. Badly. And is willing to use almost any tactic to achieve that. And if I were them, I would want to get my best men, set them up as teachers, and then have them kill me when they get here. And of course, to make sure they get hired, they would make it so they have the best resume, make them look the most appealing. So I can't afford to have a normal hiring method. Well, I've never had assassins after me before, so I suppose I can't really comment on that, Momo replied, still not sounding convinced. Just please be careful that in your attempts to avoid these assassins, you don't end up falling prey to unrelated dangers. Fair enough. Izuku nodded in agreement. Thank you for the advice, Yayarozu. You may take your leave. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Why did I think that was a good idea? Izuku groaned as he slumped into his couch, with a face full of remorse. I've never had employees before. How was I supposed to review them? Did I go too easy on them? Was I too harsh? What was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to say? Listening to Izuku vent, on the couch opposite to him, was his mother. Smiling patiently. I think you did fine for your first time, Izuku. These kids were all doing their best, and none of them really needed to be told anything in particular. Then what was the point of this? Izuku asked. Inko shrugged. There are lots of pointless things in business, Izuku, things like this just kind of happen. Don't worry too much about it, it's not like it took a lot of their time, well except for Mina, but that was important. I guess. Still, I feel bad about calling them for something pointless. Izuku sighed. I guess I could give them another pay raise. Izuku, you can't give your employees a raise every time something slight inconvenient happens, Inko told him. If you do something you think slightly inconveniences your employees, stop. That's it. Well, if you say so. Izuku sighed. Oh, and Izuku. I wanted to tell you I'll be leaving around the same time the UA students do. Inko explained. Really? Izuku asked, looking a bit startled. It feels like we barely talked. Well, we've both been busy, Inko told him. And we both know I'm not exactly one to stand out, unlike Mitsuki. I wish I could stay longer, but I have work to do. I've seen the finances here, and I'm more sure now than ever that I need to grow my business as much as possible. That's fair. Izuku sighed. I'm gonna miss you, Mom. Oh. Sweetheart. Inko got up, walked around the table, and hugged her son. I'm not gone yet. How about we go watch some of those All Might movies together like we used to? You know what? I'd like that. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Alright, guys. Listen up. Mina shouted to her entire class, who had all gathered together. We don't have long until we leave, so we need to do something special. Let's get the party planning begin. Chapter 110, Field Day. It had been 2 days since Izuku's performance reviews. And 1A had been hard at work in the backyard. Sure, they still did a lot of the basic things they needed to do, Sato still cooked, and they still taught lessons, but most of their time was spent in the backyard, working on something. And the kids weren't allowed to see what it was, as Izuku banned them from going into the backyard, and all the ways that one could normally see the backyard from inside the house had been blocked off, and the entrance to the backyard was being guarded by Shoji. It was clear that whatever this was, it was supposed to be a surprise. With only 1A, Izuku and a select number of the kids were informed of what was going on. These kids were Yanda, of course, Fuku, and Kyoku, who were told for reasons that went unexplained, and all of them were being tight-lipped. So when, after breakfast, Izuku asked for all the kids to gather around the entrance to the backyard, almost everyone was excited. What do you think they've been doing? Ken asked all the other kids who'd gathered at the entrance. That being Eri, Kei, Kiba, Fu, Sansen, Kota, Shiroku, Yami, Otoko, Netsu, Nara, and of course Ken himself. My guess is that it's some kind of going-away party. Given how they're gonna be leaving soon. Fu guessed. Although you'd think we'd be the ones making the preparations. Seems a bit weird to make a party for yourselves. Is it? I had birthday parties for myself before I met Daddy. Kei said. Kei, you say the most casually sad things I've ever heard, Fu responded. Before the conversation could continue, Achiko came in. Alright, everyone. I'm sure you've noticed we've been up to something for the past couple of days, and now it's finally time to show you what we've been working on. Alright. Netsu cheered with excitement. This better be good. Ken said with an equal amount of excitement. Yeah. Sansen screamed. Okay. Let's go. Achiko opened the door, and she and the kids charged outside and saw that the backyard had been changed. The most noticeable was a giant stage, with a judging panel in of it and bleachers behind it. Another very noticeable thing was that part of the nearby forest had been cleared out, and in its place were 2 different racing courses, on opposite sides, although they could only see the starting lines. There was another, smaller stage, with a bunch of weights on them. Close to that, there was a big pit with some weird green slime in there. The court also had 2 large walls put on either side of it. Lastly, there were a bunch of tables set up, seemingly for dining. Surprise! Mina shouted, as she and 1A, Sans and Momo, were all standing outside waiting for them, along with Kai who was off to the side. We decided to have one big field day. We're gonna have lots of competitions, and Momo even made trophies. There's also gonna be a big feast, and tonight we're gonna do a fireworks show. Toru explained enthusiastically. A fireworks show. Kei screamed excitedly. I love fireworks. Shiruka shouted, with a look of pure joy on her face. Forget the light show. What kind of competitions? Kiba asked. Oh, you'll see. Mina said. Let's not waste time. Let the games begin. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. The first competition was a simple one. Tug of war. This was what the pit was built for. The rules went as such: there would be 2 teams, a boys' team and a girls' team.
Both of them would be on either side of the pit and would have to pull a rope to force the other side to fall into the pit and the slime. As for the teams. For the boys, there was Sato, Ken, Fu, and Kai. Kai was exempt from having to fall into the pit because of his size. And for the girls, there was Nara, Kiba, Achiko, and Shiroku. And both teams were using special sports tracksuits to make sure their clothes didn't get dirty from the slime. Both teams were ready to go, holding the huge, steel rope. Kai used all three of his heads to bite onto it, Ken was using his forearms transformation, and Nara was using her human geyser transformation. Sato had eaten a ton of sugar, and Achiko was using 15% full cowling. You ready to lose? Ken taunted, looking specifically at his sister and Kiba. As if. Nara and Kiba said at the same time. Last time I checked, human geyser was stronger than four-arms dweeb. Nara said in her now extremely deep voice. But he's not alone. Sato smirked. Sorry ladies, but you're all going straight into the pit. We'll see about that. Achiko shouted back confidently, her competitive spirit lit like a match. Fu looked back at Kai and Kai nodded back. Alright, let the tug of war begin. Mina called, waving a flag to signify the start of the match. Immediately. Both sides started pulling, using their immense strength to try and pull the other side towards them. At first, it was hard to see who was winning. Both sides seemed rather equal, with the boys moving very, very slowly towards the hole. However, that soon changed, as the girls started kicking it up a notch. 18% full cowling. Achiko shouted. Rah! Nara screamed as she increased in size, spikes growing from her neck and head, as well as her tail, as she went full power mode. Suddenly, the boys were moving towards the hole much, much faster. Gah! No! Ken shouted, as the pit rapidly got closer and closer. Need to buy more time. Moving to phase 2. Fu thought. Kaiosei's tendrils wrapped around all of the boys, before more of them went deep into the ground, spreading like roots, to try and help ground them and keep them from getting pulled. At the same time, Kaiosei spread between the fibers of the rope, merging with it and pulling towards them, making it so the rope itself was trying to move towards the boys. This significantly slowed down the pace at which the boys moved toward the pit, but they were still being pulled toward it, just much slower. Clever brother, but you've only stalled your defeat, Kiba stated confidently. Guys, I don't think we can win, Fu stated. Don't give up. Sato shouted as he tugged with all his might. Come on guys. Keep pulling. I'm trying. Ken shouted. Soon, the boys were beginning to teeter on the edge of the pit, with Sato's foot right next to the hole. We're almost there, girls. Achiko shouted with a big smile on her face. They're done for. Shiroku stated confidently. Get ready to eat slime doofus. Nara shouted at her brother. In response, Fu smirked. Time for stage 3. He raised one of his hands and gave Kai a thumbs up. Seeing the signal, Kai knew it was time. And he actually started trying, giving the rope his strongest tug. Whoa, /huh/aw. Everyone, on both sides, shouted out in surprise as Kai's sudden yanking took everyone off guard, as the rope suddenly shot back towards the boys' side. However, Fu was prepared, of course, and using Kaiosei's tendrils, he made sure no one got flung into the air, or tripped up, and stood their ground. The same could not be said for the girls, who were immediately taken off guard. All of them fell forward. This quickly resulted in them being pushed into the pit and falling into the slime. Splat! And the boys win. Mina announced. Yay! Kai shouted out, screaming with excitement, while everyone except him and Fu was all extremely confused as to what just happened. Kai lowered his head towards Fu. Big brother, your plan worked. We won. Yep. Good job, Kai, Fu said, petting Kai's head. You too, Kaiosei. What just happened? Ken asked, happy they won but confused as to where all that power came from.
Oh, well, you see, I realized pretty quickly that we wouldn't be able to win under normal circumstances, Fu explained. Those girls are just way too strong. So I needed a plan. So I talked to Kai before we started, and told him not to start trying until I gave him the signal. We'd wait until the girls got confident, and then take them by surprise, make them trip, and pull them into the hole before they could get over the shock. Wow, good thinking, kid. You gave them the tug-of-war equivalent of a sucker punch. Sato gave Fu a high five. Foul. I call foul. Kiba jumped out of the hole, her clothes covered in slime. Deceiving us like that. What an underhanded trick, Fu. Yeah, we definitely would have won if they fought fair. Shiroku objected as she crawled out of the pit, Achiko and Nara following behind. We fought fair. Nothing in the rules said we couldn't do that. Fu countered. This wasn't a competition to see who was stronger, it was to see which side to put the other side in the pit. And you fell, so we won. Hear that, losers, we won fair and square. Ken gloated. Don't get a big head. The only reason you won is because of Fu and Kai. Nara rebutted. Now. Everyone settle down. Ida came in to break up the argument. There will be no sore losers or winners. The boys won fair and square, fighting smarter, not harder. Ken and Sato were still very important to Fu's plan, even if they didn't know about it. After all, the plan wouldn't work if they all fell in the hole right away. Shoji pointed out. And it's your own fault for not paying attention, Shinso added, scolding the girls. If you had, you would have noticed that Kai's heads weren't moving at all until Fu gave the signal. Not to mention Fu's plan relied on all of you getting overconfident, so if it worked you only have yourselves to blame for not keeping your guards up. All the girls' eyes widened, and their faces went red with embarrassment, as they realized the blame for their defeat rested mostly on them. Kiba, did you really think I would ever try to beat you with a trick under my sleeve? Fu asked her. Kiba stared at him blankly for a moment, before tilting her head down. And for a moment everyone got a bit worried that Kiba might throw a tantrum or something. But their fears were abated when Kiba tilted her head up towards the sky and laughed, putting her hands on her hips. Ah ha ha ha. Touché, Fu. Touché. But know that every defeat I suffer only makes me stronger. Next time we face each other, I will come out victorious. That's the spirit, Kiba. Achiko grinned, patting her on the back. All right. And here are your rewards. Mina announced as Shoji came forward, holding 4 medals. Congratulations to our tug-of-war champions. Sato, Fu, Ken, and Kai. Shoji put the medals on all of their necks except Kai, whose head was too big, and as such, he hung it on one of his teeth. Phew. Man, I am pooped. Sato was struggling not to just pass out there and now, as his quirks' downsides started to rear their ugly head. I'm gonna take a quick nap and then join back with the cooking team. Go ahead, big guy, you've earned it. Mina told him, patting him on the back as he walked back towards the house. Now, after a short break, we'll move on to the next event. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Okay, boys and girls. It's time for the next event. Mina announced. Dodgeball. Everyone was now at the court, with the participants standing on the court, while everyone else sat on the bleachers. On the court were Fu, Su, Kiba, Nara, Ojiro, Sansen, Netsu, Ken, Achiko, Shiroku, Shoji, and Tokoyami. Alright, with all our contestants lined up, it's time to decide who is on whose team. Mina said, picking up a hat and holding it out towards everyone. In this hat are pieces of paper. Blue and red respectively. These will decide what team you're on, so go ahead and pull one out. Blue team to the left, and red team to the right. All the participants lined up and took a paper from the hat, before lining up on opposite sides of the court. On the left side was the red team. Su, Kiba, Ojiro, Sansen, Netsu, and Nara. On the right was blue team. Fu, Achiko, Shiroku, Shoji, Tokoyami, and Ken. Would you look at that, the chance to avenge myself has arrived sooner than I thought. Kiba said, looking right at Fu. Either that or the chance to learn from another defeat, Fu responded. Either way, win-win. Alright. With the teams decided, I'll go over the rules while Kaminari and Jiro set up the balls. Mina said. Kaminari snickered as he worked. Balls. Jiro rolled her eyes. Really? Grow up. So the rules are simple: if you get hit by the ball, you're out. If you catch the ball, you stay in. Mina explained. Normally, if you caught the ball, the person who threw it would be out, but that might be a bit unfair to the people who only have two hands. Also, you can only catch things with hands, or things that look like hands. So Sansen, Kyosei, if you want to catch them, you have to make hands. Also, you're not allowed to really hurt anyone. If you do, then you're out. Unless it's Sansen of Fu, because you can't really injure them with dodgeballs. Alright, now with those rules in place, Ken, Nara, do your thing. Right. They both said at the same time, before activating their Omnitrixes. After a flash of green and pink, Ken had turned into 4 arms again, and Nara was XLR8. No one try to go for the balls, Fu said immediately. We're not gonna outspeed Nara. Don't even try. Just go on the defensive. Alrighty then, with that done, let the game begin. Mina signaled. Immediately, just as Fu predicted, Nara dashed forward at extreme speeds and grabbed all 6 dodgeballs before anyone on their side could get one. Kiba, Netsu, Su, you guys are our cannons, me Sansen and Ojiro will go on defense, Nara said, handing 2 balls each to those three individuals. Oh yeah. Netsu smirked and set one of the balls down, before tossing the other one up, and as it came down, he hit forward with his palm, while also creating an explosion of fire in his hand, causing the ball to fly towards Tokoyami like a rocket. Dark Shadow came out and caught the ball, just barely. Kiba threw both balls at Fu at high speed, one aiming for his chest, the other for his leg. Fu, rather than move out of the way, had his entire upper body fold back, using Kyosei to move his body at high speeds, and in unnatural ways, snapping his spine in half to dodge one of the balls, and snapping his leg upwards to dodge the other ones, causing the balls to fly past him, and Fu sent out 2 tendril arms to grab them before they rebounded back. Su tossed up the balls, before jumping up, and kicking them at Achiko and Shiroku. Achiko dodged out of the way, and Shoji extended an arm in front of Shiokuru, catching it, and Fu used a tentacle to catch the one Achiko dodged. Netsu, realizing he had the last ball, decided to take aim at Ken. Boom! Netsu shot him another explosive shot, this time more powerful, right at Ken, hoping he wouldn't have time to react. But Ken was alert and reacted quickly, and with 4 arms, he was able to cover a lot of his body, and caught the ball, quickly putting out the fire that was on the ball. Thankfully they were fire resistant. With all the balls on the blue team's side, it was time for some retaliation. Everyone target Ojiro. Fu said as he used his tentacle to redistribute the balls, giving 2 to Shiroku, and 2 to Achiko. Giving 1 to Ken, and keeping 1 to himself. Ha! Ojiro went on guard at hearing he was going to be targeted, as everyone on the blue but Fu tossed the balls right at Ojiro. Kiba and Nara ran in and caught 2 of the balls. Sansen managed to extend her celt, creating arms to grab 2 of them, and Ojiro caught the last one. And, Su is out. Mina called. Ha! Ha! Kiba cried out in confusion, looking over to the left where Su had been, to see a ball on the floor in front of her, seeming to have bounced off her. You guys really need to pay attention. Fu reminded them. As it turns out, while everyone was distracted by the attack on Ojiro, Fu a second later than everyone else, sneakily threw his ball at Su, while she was running over to defend Ojiro, hitting her in the shoulder. Well, I guess I'm out. Su said as she walked off the field. Be careful guys, Fu's a tricky one. We know. Kiba said, glaring at Fu. Well then. Let's try this. Kiba jumped into the air, and threw the ball down at Fu, with incredible strength. The ball moved so fast Fu had no hope of dodging it in time, so he once again had Kyosei snap him in half, bending back in an inhuman fashion,
and allowing the ball to fly behind him. However, this was Kiba's plan, and the ball, still moving at incredible speeds, bounced off the wall and headed right towards Fu's legs. Splat! The ball hit Fu's legs, destroying them as it moved back towards Kiba's side. Sanson caught the ball as it came back to their side, although it was now covered in blood, and still had some bone dust as well. Fu is out. Mina called, as Fu now lay on the ground as his legs grew back. Didn't know you could do that, Fu said, as he used Kyosei's tendrils to push him back up onto his almost regenerated feet. I guess you underestimated me, Kiba said, smirking proudly at the undead boy. Guess I did. Good work. But don't let it go to your head. Fu warned her, as he stepped off the field. With that done, Nara immediately went over to Netsu and went to give one of the balls to him. Here you go. Thanks. Netsu went to take the ball, but suddenly Nara zipped away from him towards the front of the line that divided her side from the other teams and threw it at Ken. But Ken knew she was faking him out. She was his sister, after all, so he knew that if she wanted to give the ball to Netsu, she would have just zipped it into his hand, and so he was ready, quickly raising his arms and catching the ball. Nice try, loser, I know your tricks. Darn it, Nara muttered. Sorry, Netsu, I wanted to get the drop on him. Don't worry about it. Netsu reassured her, as he picked up the ball that hit Sue. I got this. Let's go. Sanson called, as she took Ojiro's ball, and held all 4 balls in front of Kiba. Kiba. Kiba smirked. Good thinking, sister. Bang. 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 Kiba smacked the balls in quick succession, aiming at Achiko, Shoji, and Ken specifically, aiming 2 at Achiko to make sure. Achiko and Shoji jumped out of the way, and Ken spun around to avoid the ball and threw his own ball at Kiba. Boom! Then, Netsu blasted a ball at Achiko, hitting her while she was dodging the other balls. Ken's ball hit Kiba, and the ball Kiba threw at Ken rebounded and hit Ken's foot. Uraraka, Ken, and Kiba are all out. Mina called. Darn, Achiko muttered in frustration. Not my best day. Aw man. Ken groaned. Curses. Kiba swore as she pouted heavily. Ha! That's what you get for being cocky. Nara taunted her brother. Don't get too full of yourself. You just lost your big gun. Ken called out, as Kiba and Achiko walked off the field. Although my elimination is a heavy loss, I have faith my team will succeed in my absence, Kiba said, as they went off to the side. Meanwhile, both teams were struggling to get as many balls as they could. Sanson picked up the 3 balls that ended up on her side, while Shiruku, Shoji, and Dark Shadow picked up the balls on their side. Oh! Give me one! I have an idea! Netsu shouted. Immediately, the other side got defensive, putting their balls down as they saw Sanson hand a ball to Netsu, getting ready to defend themselves. Netsu smirked, and then tossed the ball up. Solar flare. Suddenly, the brightness of Netsu's flames exploded, the bright light blinding everyone. Ag! Dark Shadow recoiled from the light, shrinking away, leaving Tokoyami completely exposed. The ball came down, and Netsu smacked it at Tokoyami, hitting him right in the chest. Then, while still emitting a blinding light, Netsu grabbed the 2 other balls and threw them right at Shiruku and Shoji, who were stumbling around, unable to see. Once he was sure he hit them, Netsu turned down the light. And blue team is out. I think. Mina said, blinking rapidly like everyone else after her eyes got blasted with light. Did you guys get hit? I couldn't see anything. Shiruku sighed. I got hit. Me as well, Tokoyami said, lowering his head. I did too, Shoji admitted. Well then. Red team wins. Mina announced. That's so cheap. Ken cried out. But not against the rules. Now don't be a sore loser. Mina told him. Kaminari. Jiro. The medals if you would. Red team gathered up, as the two students bestowed medals on them.
Good job, Netsu. Sue praised him.
Indeed. Your strategy sealed their fates and ensured our victory,
Kiba added.
The whole team was abuzz with praise, and they probably would have patted him on the back or lifted him if he weren't on fire. Netsu's flames became slightly more intense as he blushed, giving them a smile almost as bright as the solar flare he unleashed.
Thanks, guys. I couldn't have done it without you.
Everyone gave their applause, even the blue team, although for Ken it was begrudging.
Congratulating them. Okay. After another short break, we'll be moving on to the next event, Mina announced. Get ready to go. Plus Ultra. Chapter 111, Field Day Part 2. Alright, everyone. It took us a while, but we've finally set everything up, Mina announced.
Most of the kids in Class 1A were sitting on the grass, looking up at a big screen that 1A had set up. On the screen was Sansan, Shiroku, Fu, Kiba, Sue, Siro, Jun Ken, as Wildmutt, Nara, as Wildvine, and Achiko, all in trees standing on big branches. This footage was being gathered by drones, scattered through the forest, courtesy of Momo. All of this equipment was being operated by Mineta off in the corner, via computers, something he was very familiar with handling.
Now it's time the floor is lava, Mina said. Now to explain the rules real quick.
Your goal is not to touch the ground, and you have to make everyone else touch the ground as well,
without attacking them directly.
If you touch the ground, you're out. If you attack someone else directly, you're out.
Alright. Now. Get ready. 3, 2, 1. Go.
As soon as Mina called it, Kiba burst from her tree, and immediately smashed Ken's tree, before retreating back to her own branch. Ken jumped off his now falling tree, onto a new tree. However, the second he landed on it, Shiroka shot a web shot at Ken's claws, sticking him to the tree.
Rah!
Ken roared out in anger before Kiba went and smashed the tree as well, causing it to fall, while Ken was still stuck to it, meaning he couldn't jump away. Ken's tree hit the ground, bringing Ken with it.
And Ken is out, Mina announced, using the drone's loudspeaker. Go!
Ken growled at the two girls, looking down on him with cocky smirks.
Smash!
Achiko smashed through Kiba's tree, causing it to start to fall before grabbing into another tree, and jumping up onto a branch.
Don't get cocky, girls. Whoa!
Kiba jumped off her falling tree, heading towards another tree, but before she could reach it,
kaboom!
Nara threw her methane-filled pods at the nearby trees' bases, exploding on impact, and causing them to fall, including the tree Kiba was heading towards. Now without any trees to land on or anything to touch, Kiba was left stuck in the air, quickly falling to the ground.
Twip!
Shiroka shot a web at Kiba before she hit the ground, before yanking her towards herself and grabbing her.
Looks like Kiba and Shiroku are teaming up,
Fu thought, before using Kyosei's tendrils to hop away, deeper into the forest.
Boom!
Nara threw another seed bomb at the tree that Shiroku was perched on, causing her to jump off it, still carrying Kiba as she went deeper into the forest away from Nara. With that, Itsu, Achiko, Sansan, and Siro all decided to retreat away from Nara's relentless onslaught of bombs, heading in separate directions, deeper into the forest. They're all too fast for me to follow, except for Sansan, Nara thought, before giving chase to the acid girl. Sansan's amorphous form moved through the trees easily, her body latching onto at least 3 trees at once, before moving on to the next.
How do I trip her up?
Nara wondered as she followed, her vine legs doing similar things to Sansan's tendrils, easily allowing her to move from tree to tree. Even if I blow up 1 tree or even 5, she can switch between them on the fly. There was, of course, one way to take down Sansan. However, it wasn't a method available to her.
Shooting star!
Achiko shouted as she rocketed towards them, touching Sansan as she went past.
Whoa!
Nara barely managed to duck in time, keeping Achiko from touching her. Immediately, Sansan fell to the ground, Achiko having increased her gravity.
Sansan is out. Mina announced.
Achiko landed on a branch and put her fingers together.
Release.
The effects of the increased gravity wore off, and Sanson could move freely again.
Boom. 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 Boom.
Nara immediately started going for Achiko, throwing as many seed bombs as possible at the tree Achiko was standing on, and all the trees surrounding her. Not having much to stand on, Achiko decided to use her quirk on herself, jumping into the air and floating.
Oh, come on. How am I supposed to knock her down if I can't attack her? Nara wondered as Achiko started floating away. She wasn't moving very fast, but given how many trees Nara destroyed, it wouldn't be long until Achiko got out of her range. Think, Nara, think. Wait a minute.
Nara pulled out a bunch of seed bombs from her back and threw them over where Achiko was going to be.
The bombs went over Achiko's position and exploded.
The explosion didn't hit Achiko, not even close, but a bit of the shockwave that came from the explosion did, sending her hurtling down.
Oh, crack.
Achiko grunted as she hit the ground.
And Achiko is eliminated. Mina announced.
Achiko pouted, releasing the effect of her quirk on herself, before pulling herself to her feet. After shaking off her disappointment at losing, Achiko looked at Nara and put on an encouraging smile.
Nice work, Nara. That was some great thinking there. Thanks. Nara smiled back, feeling proud of herself.
But that feeling of pride would soon vanish.
Twip. Twip. Multiple web shots hit Nara, sticking her to the tree. Shouldn't have let your guard down.
Shiruko called from several trees away.
Smash.
Kiba then rushed in and smashed through the lower part of the trees, before getting snatched by Shiruko's web and brought back to her.
The tree fell, bringing Nara down with it. And Nara is eliminated. Mina announced. Darn it.
Nara said, disappointed in herself for having lowered her guard.
Great work, sister. Kiba complimented her partner.
Truly, this allegiance was a spectacular idea.
Indeed. Shiruko nodded, putting Kiba down on a branch.
Now, let's go look for Dash.
Siro and Tsu are out.
They heard Mina announce.
Ha, ha.
Kiba and Shiruko said at the same time, looking at the drone in shock.
Fu must have taken them out. Kiba quickly assessed.
We must find him quickly. There's no knowing what strategies he'll come up with if we give him time.
Yeah, he is far too clever for his own good, Shiruko said. Let's go. XXXXXXXXXXX.
The two continued their search, jumping around from tree to tree, looking for Fu, but they hadn't seen hide nor hair of him. Eventually, they stopped on a branch to catch their breath.
Damn it, where is he? Kiba lamented. He must be hiding, maybe he's waiting to ambush us, Shiruko said. Well, you got that right.
Quickly, Shiruko and Kiba looked up.
On a higher branch in the tree they were in was Fu.
This caused Shiruko and Kiba to pause in both shock and concern.
If Fu was giving himself away, then something had to be up. What is the meaning of this Fu? Kiba asked him, looking intently at him to see if any of Kyosei's tendrils would pop out of him. Waiting for him to attack.
What tricks do you have up your sleeve?
Oh, it's something I've been practicing for a while, Fu said casually, completely relaxed despite the situation. I call it, mobile shell. Suddenly, Kiba and Shiruko were grabbed by Kyosei?
But he wasn't attached to Fu, although he was still wrapped around someone, as the arms grabbing them by their necks, while covered in Kyosei's tendrils, were still human arms underneath.
What?
Both of them were too shocked to move for a second, and Kyosei took the time to fall backward off the branch, bringing them down with him. As they were approaching the ground, Shiruko shot out a web at a tree in a desperate attempt to stop themselves from falling, while Kyosei extended his body over her, catching the web before it could go anywhere.
With that attempt foiled, they fell to the ground, hitting it in seconds. Shiruko and Kiba are out. Mina announced. That makes Fu, The winner of the floor is lava competition. Ha, ha, ha. Kiba and Shiroku screamed, confused as to what just happened. Wait 1 minute. Kiba said, swiftly getting up and looking at Fu. If you're up there, then who's with Kyosei? To answer this question, Kyosei separated from his current host, revealing that underneath was Fu's corpse. It looked exactly like Fu, but just dead, or rather completely dead, unlike Fu who was undead. Ah! Shiroku immediately got up and moved away from the corpse, before covering her nose. Oh, it smells. Ugh! Since when could you make doppelgangers? Kiba asked him angrily, still upset from her surprise loss. Since always, Fu answered. It's just only learned how to properly make them now. You see, normally whenever I regenerate, whatever parts of me that weren't used for my regeneration just lay there. And so I took advantage of that. Take a look at my left hand, or rather what was my left hand. The two of them looked and saw that the left hand on Fu's former body had its pinky missing. For a few seconds, they just looked at it in confusion, before their eyes widened. Don't tell me, you ripped off your own pinky finger and regrew your body from that. Kiba looked up at him in shock. How? Well, you see, I figured something out. I am completely unaffected by the destruction of my brain. Why is that? You'd think I'd need that to think and stuff. Fu started explaining. But if you destroy my brain, it's just as harmful to me as taking off a finger. What's more, if you destroy it entirely, I'm still conscious. And if you take me apart, I can choose what part of me I grow back from. So I came to the conclusion that every part of my body is a brain in some way. Meaning if I choose to, I can grow back my body from a ripped-off finger, even if the rest of me is fine. Because that finger is just as much me as the rest of my body. That's just, wow, Shiroku said, still shocked at this revelation. So do you cut off your finger and the rest of you goes limp? Pretty much, Fu said, as Kyosei finished crawling up the tree back towards him and re-entered his body. And since that body has a brain and organs, Kyosei can use it just fine, at least for a little while. Very clever little guys, but it's time for the game to end, so if you would come back so we can give you your awards. Mina told them. XXXXXXXXXXX. Fu, Kiba, and Shiroku were all standing on a podium with everyone watching around them. With of course Fu standing on the highest one, Shiroku on the second highest, and Kiba on the lowest one. In shared second place, we have Shiroku and Kiba. Mina announced as Shoji came in, holding 2 medals and a trophy. Shoji came in and placed the 2 second-place medals on both Kiba and Shiroku, who didn't look very pleased about it but kept quiet. And first place goes to everyone's favorite corpse. Fu. Mina announced, getting a round of applause. Shoji awarded Fu the trophy, and he held it high into the air. I would like to thank Kyosei for, well, the obvious. And I would like to thank Kiba and Shiroku for taking out Ken so early, that way this strategy could actually work. Because that would not have worked on Ken. TCH. Ken frowned, wishing he'd lasted longer. Alright, everyone. Now it's time to fill up. Mina said, as the doors to the house opened up. Sato, Izuku, Momo, Fuku, Kyoko, Inko, and Yanda all came out pushing carts that were covered with all sorts of foods. Oh, that smells amazing. Toru said, in a voice that could only make you imagine how hungry she looks. Great, I need to eat a lot after using mobile shell, Fu said, eager to get some food in his stomach. I too am excited to indulge in a bountiful feast after vigorous exercise. Kiba licked her lips looking at the steaks on one of the carts. Are those candy apples? Eri gasped, spotting her favorite treat on a cart. Man, I can't wait to get that in my mouth, Kaminari said, causing Mineta and Jiro to have to hold in their laughter. We made all of this for you guys so I hope you like it. Fuku stuttered. We've all been working hard to make sure this would a meal you'd never forget. Sato announced. So please dig in. Izuku said with a smile. And so they descended, like a swarm of locusts, onto the food carts. In the chaos, Fuku managed to slip out with 2 plates of food and headed toward the bleachers. And under there, sitting away from everyone else, was Mu, where he'd been the whole time. "I brought the food," Fuku said, handing a plate to Mu, who eagerly accepted it. "Thank you," Mu said, before digging in. Fuku watched him eat for a few seconds, and gave a sigh of relief when she saw him enjoying her food. She then looked back at everyone else, enjoying the food she and the cooking team had worked hard to make. It had been a stressful task at first, working with all those people. However, Fuku had come to realize that if she focused and let herself enjoy her work, then she could get over that, and eventually, she did. And now, she's glad she did chip in. Seeing people appreciate her cooking did wonders for her self-esteem. After taking in the sight, she dug in as well, letting herself relax and enjoy the fruits of her labor. Chapter 112, Field Day Part 3. Alright, everyone. Are your bellies filled up? Mina announced to the crowd of kids and 1A in front of her. Because it's time for the next big event. The scavenger hunt. Mina gestured to 4 differently colored eggs beside her, 1 white, 1 bronze, 1 silver, and 1 platinum. A ton of these eggs have been put in different locations, all around the forest in every place you could imagine. We have white eggs, which are the easiest to find and are worth 1 point. We have bronze eggs, which are a bit more hidden and are worth 3 points. Sliver eggs are even more hidden than that and are worth 6 points. Then we have the rare gold egg. These things are really hard to find and are worth 10 points. And lastly, we have the ultra-rare platinum egg. There are only 5 of these things, and we've put them in super secret locations throughout the forest. Finding one of these babies will net you a total of 50 points. Already, some of the more competitive kids, namely Ken, Kiba, and Fu, were thinking up plans. Now for the rules. Mina continued. First off, when you find an egg, you must put it in your basket. Once an egg is inside another person's basket, you can't steal it. Attacking them is also a no-go. But if they find it first, but haven't put it in the basket, you are allowed to steal it. If your basket is full, then you'll need to come back here and empty it out. One last thing. You all have 2 hours to find these eggs. Now as for the contestants. It's gonna be all kids this time. And we're doing it in pairs. That's right, this is gonna be a team effort. Now as for the teams. First, we have Fu and Kei. Let's do our best, Fu. Kei said, raising her hand up for a high five, which Fu promptly gave her. Then Sansan and Yanda. Mina went on. Sansan gave Yanda a big thumbs up. We have Lady Kei and Eri. Mina continued. Don't worry, dear sister. I will lead us to victory. Kiba said, putting her arm around Eri. I'll try my best. Eri responded, giving her a determined look. Ken and Otoko. Mina called. Ready to win? Ken asked his partner cockily. Otoko shrugged. Nara and Kota. Mina went on. I'll do what I can, Kota told her. That's all I can ask, Nara reassured him. And lastly, we have Shiruku and Kyoku. Mina finished. Let's do it, little sister. Shiruku said, patting Kyoku on the head. Alrighty then. Before we begin, first we'll be handing out these handy-dandy earpieces. Mina said, as Shoji came forward and handed a set of earpieces out to all the contestants. These will let you communicate with your partner, no matter where you two might be. All the pairs to the earpieces, except for Ken and Otoko, as neither of them thought it would be particularly useful, and everyone took a basket. Alrighty then, will all contestants line up at the edge of the forest? Mina instructed. All 12 participants lined up, right outside the forest. Hey, Ken whispered to Otoko, as he fiddled with his Omnitrix. I have a plan. We're going to go our separate ways, and I need you to collect as many bronze and silver eggs as you can. Don't worry about the white eggs, Sis is gonna snatch those all up very quickly. Just focus on looking for whatever silver and bronze eggs you can. I doubt you'll find a gold egg, but if you do, grab those too. Got it? Otoko nodded. Meanwhile, Yonda was whispering something to Sanson. Alrighty then. Ready. Set. Go. Mina said. Nara and Ken slammed down on their Omnitrixes. Ken transforming into Wildmutt, and Nara into XLR8. But at the same time, Sanson moved back towards Mina and picked up the display eggs, before putting them in her basket. And that's 70 points for us. Yonda smirked. What? You can't do that. Kiba objected. Those eggs were just for display. They don't count. Shiruku added. Actually they do. Fu corrected. Mina never said that they didn't count, and isn't the best place to hide something right in plain sight? That's right, little guy. Mina confirmed. All those eggs counted just as much as the ones in the forest. That means Sanson and Yonda now have a 70-point lead. Curses. Kiba said, before grabbing Eri and putting her on her back. Eri, post haste. With that, they charged into the forest, along with every pair except for Sanson, Yonda, Ken, and Otoko. As Yonda and Sanson were heading into the forest, Ken jumped in front of them, and quickly sniffed her basket, before immediately running off in the other direction. Otoko went in a separate direction, trying to follow Ken's order. Ken must have smelled our eggs so that way he could detect them with his smell, including the platinum eggs. Yonda frowned. Sanson. Let's go. And with that, everyone was now in the forest. XXXXXXXXXXX. Nara carried Kota deeper into the forest until they eventually reached a lake. She set him down on the side of the lake, before explaining her plan. Look, I'm going to try and gather as many eggs in a little time as possible. I'll be mainly going for the white and bronze eggs. After that, I'll use Ditto to try and search for more well-hidden eggs. But I can't really do lakes all that well. Got it, I'll take care of this, Kota said, before making water come out of his hands. The water then floated upwards and formed a bubble around his head. Right, call me when you're done searching the lake. I'll take you to the next one. Nara told him, before speeding off to look for eggs. With that, Kota jumped into the lake, the water bubble around his head, allowing him to breathe, at least for a while. He then put his hands behind him, and shoots out water from them, propelling himself through the lake with ease. Alright, they probably hid a gold or at least a silver egg in here. Not many of them can even look deep inside these lakes. Kota thought as he went deeper and deeper into the lake. They probably hid them at the bottom. Should be easy to spot gold or silver here. Quickly Kota descended deep down towards the bottom of the lake, before landing on its floor. After walking around for a few minutes, Kota eventually saw a small shine of gold. Kota swiftly propelled himself towards that gleam, and looked at it closer, seeing that there was in fact a gold egg, buried in the lake bed. After digging it back up, Kota took the egg. Alright, now let's head back to the surface to put it in the basket, and get some more air. Then I'll look around some more. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Meanwhile, Fu and Kei stopped in the forest. Alright, let's get this started, Fu said before he started taking off his shirt. Kei, please turn around. Kei did so, but was very confused. What are you doing? I'm about to use mobile shell, so I need to take my clothes off this body, Fu explained, as he finished undressing. Alright, keep looking away. Fu then grabbed his hand and ripped it off. The moment the hand came off, Fu fell to the ground, and all life left his eyes. At the same time, Fu's hand started regenerating his body, and after about a minute and a half, Fu finished regenerating and got up. Then, Kyosei wrapped himself around Fu's old body and got up, puppeting it. Fu then gave him his basket and his earpiece, and Kyosei immediately headed off. Alright, so let me explain the plan, Fu said to Kei, as he put on his clothes. Kyosei is going to go around and look for eggs on his own. But he's not smart enough to look for any of the golden or platinum eggs. Right now we should focus on getting as many white, bronze, and silver eggs. After an hour we'll meet up at the starting point to dump our eggs, and then me and Kyosei will bond again. For now, you're going to stick with me. Oh, and you can turn around now. Kei turned around and followed Fu as the two headed deeper into the forest. Why don't I look around for eggs by myself so we can look in more areas? Well, I have a hunch I'm going to need you around, Fu explained as they found a cave. Perfect, let's go in. Fu and Kei walked into the cave, heading deeper and deeper inside. Fortunately, 1A had been generous enough to put up torches in the cave, so they weren't going in blind. Well, either these torches are here to fake us out, or there's an egg in here, Fu noted. After a few minutes of walking, they reached a wider section of the cave, where they saw 3 Goliaths and 2 Beringels waiting for them. Yep, just what I thought, Fu said. He figured that they would have Grim guarding some of the eggs, and what did he see behind this wall of Grim? 2 silver eggs. Good thing I brought you with me. Huh? Kei gave him a confused look, before Fu turned her towards the Grim, and lifted her visor. All the Grim looked at Kei's beautiful eyes and quickly were turned to stone. Oh, that's why you brought me with you. Kei realized as Fu put her visor back over her eyes. Yep, Fu explained, as he started walking past all the petrified Grim. That we only have 2 baskets. Oh, Kei said, as Fu grabbed the eggs and tossed them into the basket. Let's go, we can't afford to waste even a second of time, Fu told her, as he already started walking out of the cave. Not when our competition is so steep. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ken really hoped that his plan worked out. Currently, he was running through the forest, still as Wildmutt, with his basket in his mouth, with only a few 2 white eggs he'd found in a bush, and a bronze egg he found half buried underground. Of course, he'd noticed a bunch of other eggs around that he could have gone after. In fact, by now he likely could have had at least 1 golden egg. But that wasn't his goal, at least not for now. Ken would memorize the locations of those eggs, and go back for them later, but for now, his goal was the platinum eggs. Thanks to being able to sniff the eggs in Sanson's basket, he was able to follow the trail of platinum paint that was put on the eggs. So he knew the exact path that the 1A students took to hide these eggs. After running for about 6 minutes, Ken finally found the spot he was looking for. At first glance, it was just a plain, small clearing in the forest. However, if one looked closer, they could see a small X that had been carved in the dirt. It was extremely tiny, and most of the kids would have overlooked it. Ken was one of those kids, however, thanks to Wildmutt's extremely enhanced sense of smell, he was able to detect that 1A had dug up that area and taken a platinum egg down there. Quickly, Ken went over to that spot and started digging. After digging a few feet down, he noticed he'd dug into a cave system, a rather large one from the smell of it. Ken swiftly dug a larger hole that he could fit into and jumped down. After about 7 seconds of falling, Ken hit the ground and realized the cave was way bigger than he first thought. He also assumed it was completely dark down there, but that didn't matter to Wildmutt, as his smell allowed him to figure out the locations of things even in the dark. Plus he couldn't see in this form regardless. Ken immediately started running towards where he smelled the platinum egg, chasing its trail through the cave. After running for about a minute, he smelled something approaching him. Or rather, a lot of things approaching him. Ravagers. Over 100 Ravagers were flying towards him. And he could smell the platinum egg on one of them. Ken smirked and rushed towards the swarm of Ravagers. After a few seconds, they met. The Ravagers rushed past Ken, a few hitting him in the face, but he swiftly shook it off and focused on the egg. Then, when the Ravager with the egg flew over him, he jumped up and grabbed it. After landing, Ken quickly took the egg from the small bat monster, and then threw it away. He didn't have time to waste, he knew soon he'd run out of time as Wildmutt, and he needed to get out of this cave before then, otherwise, he'd be stuck in here for 10 minutes. Ken rushed out of the cave. Thankfully the bottom of the basket was magnetic so the metal eggs didn't fall out while he ran.
He jumped onto the wall, running along it, as he made his way up to the roof of the cave, and he quickly found the hole he'd made to get in here. Ken crawled on the roof of the cave, and quickly rushed out of the hole, and back onto the surface. And just in time. BRRR. 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 BRRRRRRRR. In a flash of red, Ken turned back to normal, and still had the basket in his mouth. Pa! Ken spit out the basket. Ugh! Barely made it out in time. Ken picked up his basket and looked down to see his tracks as Wildmutt. Alright, time for part 2. While Ken waited for his Omnitrix to recharge, he'd follow his tracks, and go back for the eggs he had detected as Wildmutt. Ken followed his tracks with a smirk on his face. Alright. Only 10 minutes and I already have one of the 4 leftover eggs. I am gonna win this. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Whoosh. Nara sped through the forest as quickly as she could, stopping at every tree, bush, and rock. Stopping to look for a second, before moving on if she didn't find an egg. After finding another white egg nestled inside a small crack in a wall, and adding it to her basket. Alright, that makes 15 white eggs and 1 bronze egg. So that's 18 points. I'm still not anywhere close to Sanson's numbers. Still and Yandik can't move very quickly, so hopefully they won't be able to get a lot more points. BRRRRRRR. Nara's eyes widened as she looked down at her Omnitrix and saw it was flashing red. BRRR. 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 In a flash of red, Nara was returned to her human form. She sighed and looked down at her basket. All right. Just need to wait, and then I can do some searching as Ditto. Hopefully, Kota found some eggs in that lake. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Smash. Meanwhile, Kiba just finished smashing apart a massive boulder and found a golden egg hidden inside it. Wow. How did you find that one? Eri asked her, as Kiba pulled the egg from the rock and into her basket. I noticed that part of the rock had been melted on top, and so I figured something about this boulder was suspicious, Kiba explained. So I punched it to see what would happen. I suppose Mina must have melted a hole into this rock and hid the egg here. A clever idea, but I am far more clever. Sanson and Yonda still have more points than us, Eri said, looking down at their baskets. They'd collected a golden egg, a silver egg, and 3 white eggs. For now, dear sister. But don't fret. Out of all our foes, Sanson and Yonda are the slowest pair. Kiba told her. You and I shall emerge victorious. I'll look in the front, you look in the back. Kiba handed Eri her basket and turned around, crouching slightly, to allow Eri to get on her back. Once Eri was on her back and properly secured, with Eri's arms around her neck, and Kiba's hands holding her thighs, Kiba ran off. Kiba looking in front of her, with Eri looking behind her. Everyone was giving it their all, in the longest event so far. Chapter 113, Field Day Part 4. Ken was feeling good about his strategy. 1 platinum egg, 1 gold egg, and 2 silver eggs. It was only 20 minutes into the competition, and he'd already surpassed Sanson and Yonda's initial score. Of course, Ken figured that they'd found a few more eggs then, but still, at the speed he was gaining points, there was no way he wasn't going to win. Bum datum. He heard his Omnitrix come back online and smirked. Alright. Time to look for the next egg. Ken quickly selected Wildmutt and slammed down on the Omnitrix, and in a flash of green, he was once again in his dog-like form. Rah! Ken roared, before grabbing the basket with his mouth and smelling the basket. Getting a whiff of the platinum egg. Once he got the scent down, Ken quickly picked up a trail and started running. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. The trail led Ken to a large lake with a river flowing into it, and then, the trail went cold. Ken went to the edge of the lake and looked down inside it. They must have hidden it in this lake. No biggie. Wildmutt can swim, but
If it's as well hidden as the last egg, probably best to wait until I can use Ripjaws. Dying during an Easter egg hunt would be ultra lame. With that in mind, Ken turned around and went to go search for some gold and silver eggs. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Nara was quickly realizing there was a problem with her Ditto strategy. Sure, she could look in many different locations at once, but she only had one basket. Nara had realized this while she was carrying a bronze and silver egg back to her main self. I should have stuck to using XLR8, Nara said to herself as she ran through the forest. What would happen next would only enforce that idea. Suddenly, Sanson came out of the woods, rushed towards Nara, taking her by surprise, and snatching the eggs from her, before putting them in her own basket. Hey! Nara shouted in outrage. Sweary, not sweary, Sanson said as she slithered away. Ugh! Nara groaned in frustration, looking down at her now empty hands. Hey, Nara. I think I'm done here, she heard Kota say over her earpiece. Oh, alright. Give me 16 minutes, I'll be there, Nara told him. What am I supposed to do for 16 minutes? Kota asked impatiently. I don't know, look around the lake area. Maybe there's some stuff around there, Nara told him. Fine. Kota sighed. Nara sighed as well, not feeling great about this situation. Hopefully Ken is struggling as much as I am. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. And that's golden egg number 3, Ken remarked, as he placed the egg into his basket. He'd just found the egg buried underground, hidden under a rock. I have never appreciated wild mud more than I have now. Ken smiled to himself. How long has it been? Should be long enough. Better go back to the lake and get ready. With that decided, Ken started running back towards the lake, following his tracks once again. By the time he got back, his quirk was ready to use once again, and his Omnitrix went from red to green. Alright, time for Ripjaws, Ken shouted as he selected the form on his Omnitrix and slammed down. In a flash of green, he was Ripjaws. He wasted no time, jumping into the water immediately, keeping his basket on the edge of the lake. Ken quickly descended down towards the lake bed. This egg would be a lot harder to find than the last one, mainly because he couldn't use Wildmutt to track the egg's location. Still, Ken assumed that the egg would have to be somewhere at the bottom of the lake, so he swiftly reached the lake bed and started searching. It didn't take him long to find a person-sized hole on the lake bed. This must be where they put the egg, Ken thought as he swam down the hole. The hole went down, deeper and deeper, taking him very deep down. Eventually, as Ken swam down, he fell out of the water and into a large cave. The cave was pretty circular, it was half flooded, with water going up to Ken's chest, and it was lit by torches that were put up on the cave walls. In other words, it looked like a boss arena. And the boss, a Nuclavi, standing in the center of the arena, with a platinum egg tied around its neck. Ah, man. Ken groaned as he realized what he'd have to do. Rah-ha! The Nuclavi roared as it shot out its stretchy arm at Ken, punching him and sending him flying into a cave rock. Ove! Ken groaned in pain as he pulled himself up. Oh, this is gonna suck. Oh! Ken ducked as the monster tried to punch him again, before diving into the water, transforming his legs into a tail, and swimming towards it. The Nuclavi charged toward him and Ken swam out of the way of its charge, causing it to crash into a wall. Ken then swam back towards it and bit at its hind legs. Rah! It roared in pain, as the horse half of its body bucked and jumped around to try and shake Ken off, but Ken kept his jaw clamped down on the leg, before grabbing onto the upper part of its eggs with his claws. Ken climbed up the Nuclavi with his claws and jaw, as the monster kept running around the arena, trying to shake Ken off. After a couple of minutes, Ken managed to make his way onto the back of the Nuclavi's horse. The Nuclavi spun its upper half backward, facing Ken. As the Nuclavi raised its arms to attack Ken, Ken leaped forward and grabbed the egg that was around his neck, snatching it with his mouth. Gotcha!
Ken thought as he landed in the water and immediately started swimming away from the Nuclavi. Now I just need to get out of here. Ken started swimming towards the waterfall that led to the small cavern that got him here. However, the Nuclavi was in pursuit, charging toward him. With the monster on his tail, Ken had one option, and he leapt at the waterfall, jumping high into the air, and using his claws to stick himself to the wall. With Ken stuck to the wall above, the Nuclavi ran right into the wall, shaking the whole cavern. Whoa! Ken clung to the wall a bit tighter as the cavern shook. I need to get out of here. Ken crawled up the wall and made it into the small cavern, where he proceeded to swim up through it, towards the lake. After a bit more frantic swimming, Ken made it out of the hole and into the lake. Phew! I made it. Ken thought. Brrr. Oh. Ken thought as he saw his Omnitrix start to flash red. Brrrrrrr. Ken started swimming upwards, towards the surface. Brrrrrrr. 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 Splash! Ken made it to the surface of the lake, just as he transformed into his human form. Pa! Ken spat out the platinum egg that was still in his mouth. Ugh, that tastes worse than the basket. After trying to spit the taste out of his mouth, he grabbed the egg and started swimming back towards land. A few minutes of swimming later, Ken reached the side of the lake and crawled onto land. Oh! Ken groaned as he crawled to his basket and put the egg inside. I think I'm gonna lie down, Ken said as he rolled over and laid down on the dirt. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Kyosei felt very mixed about this mobile shell technique. On one hand, he felt very free. All his life he'd have to be stuck inside someone else, either doing exclusively what they wanted or fighting them for control. But now he could move however he wanted, without limitation. There was no delay, no resistance. Of course, he wasn't truly free. This was once Fu's body, but since Fu was no longer in it, it didn't regenerate, and in fact, this rotting corpse gave him much less nutrition, meaning he'd have to eat more of it. So he could only be separated from Fu like this for a few hours. And that brought him to the downsides of this technique. The organs tasted horrible. Fu's organs already didn't taste that great, but at least they were an endless food source that Kyosei could eat without hurting anyone. This was just bad in every conceivable way. And Kyosei just didn't like being separated from Fu. Fu was smart. He led him, taught him, and in return Kyosei helped him with whatever he wanted to do physically. They were a good pair. But now that they were separated, Kyosei felt a bit lost. Fu was decisive, he knew what to do, and if he didn't he knew the best way to find out. But Kyosei was a baby. A very smart baby, but still a baby. And one that had never really made decisions before. He was still just following Fu's orders right now, go around the forest and find eggs. And he'd been doing that without issue for a while now. He'd found about 16 white eggs, and even a silver egg that he'd noticed floating in a pond. But he kept wondering what he was supposed to do if he had to make a choice. What if one of the others tried to steal one of his eggs? Was he supposed to chase them? Let them go? He knew he couldn't attack them, but what counted as an attack? The concept of being free, while exciting in a way, was also very, very scary to Kyosei. But he wondered if it should be. As Kyosei grabbed his 17th white egg, with a tendril, he looked down at his hand. Or, rather Fu's hand. He wondered if, years later, when he knew more and was smarter, would he prefer to be separate from Fu? Or would he rather stay inside him, and let him call the shots? Before he could contemplate that for much longer, he heard Fu speak to him using the earpiece. Kyosei, hour's up. Head back to the backyard. Fu ordered. Kyosei let out a noise in response, to let him know that he'd heard him, before immediately heading back to that area. This would be a question that an older, smarter Kyosei would answer. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Ken was quickly on his way to his third platinum egg. Problem was, it was in the sky somewhere. Ken had followed the trail of the third egg, however, once he reached a large clearing, he smelled that the egg had been taken into the sky. Meaning once again, he couldn't use Wildmutt to track its exact location. But this was even worse than the lake, because the sky was a significantly larger space to search. And so began what became Ken's most frustrating search yet. He'd turn into Stinkfly, take to the skies, look around, and come back down before his transformation wore off. This took up a whole hour of his time before eventually, he found something. Another huge horde of Ravagers. But this was a much bigger horde than the one in the cave. There were so many of them, all flying so closely together, that it just looked like a big black ball in the sky. If Ken had to guess, he'd probably guess that the egg was somewhere in that black mass of claws and teeth. Most likely, somewhere in the center. Not wanting to waste time and risk having to retreat, Ken opened fire, shooting out goop from his 4 tentacle-like eye stalks, rapid fire. The goop started hitting the Ravagers, each shot encompassing their tiny bodies, keeping them from flying and making them fall to the ground. Ken took out a couple dozen Ravagers this way, before they charged at him, screeching and giving off a truly awful noise. Seeing them get closer, Ken flew away from them, while continuing to fire at them. Fortunately, they weren't faster than him, so Ken could outmaneuver them pretty easily. As Ken quickly whittled away at their numbers, he noticed a metallic gleam coming from the center of the horde. The egg. Seeing a glimpse of his prize, Ken focused his fire on that area, taking out a few dozen more Ravagers, before he saw it. He finally hit the Ravager with the egg, and he saw it fall out of the cloud of other Grimm. Ken flew down towards that Ravager, with the swarm following. Gotcha! Ken said as he caught the Grimm and the egg. With his prize in hand, Ken flew away from the swarm at full speed. After a couple minutes, Ken finally lost the swarm, and breathed a sigh of relief, as he landed on the ground. Ree! The Ravager in his hand cried as it struggled. Alright, that's enough out of you, Ken said, before he bit the head off of the Ravager, killing it, and causing it to fade away. Leaving only the egg and the goop. In response, Ken popped the egg into his mouth, and swished it around for a few seconds, before spitting it back up, goop-free. Gonna have to wash that, Ken said, as he plopped it into the basket. I better win after all this. Wonder how Otoko's doing. XXXXXXXXXXX. Otoko was slightly disappointed with his egg count. Very slightly. Altogether, Otoko had collected 15 white eggs, 2 bronze eggs, and 1 silver egg. Considering the contest would be coming to an end soon, that wasn't a very impressive number. Still, Otoko didn't really care about winning. This was more of a fun exercise for him. Most of his disappointment came from not wanting to weigh Ken down. But there really wasn't much he could do. He'd just try his best and hope that was enough. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Do you think we'll win? Kyoko asked her partner, as they collected their 5th golden egg. I'd like to hope so, Shiroku said, watching a spider come up to her. Their strategy was simple. Shiroku was to commune with the spiders in the forest, and they would tell her where the eggs were. They'd found quite a few eggs this way, but not as many as you'd think. I'm honestly feeling a bit popped out, Kyoko admitted. All this walking is a bit much for me. Well then let's take a break, Shiroku suggested. What? Shouldn't we not waste any time? Kyoko asked. This whole event is for fun. If you're exhausted, then you're not having fun, Shiroku pointed out, before taking a seat on the ground. Now come, let's gaze at the clouds. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. With time running out, Ken was frantically running towards the location of the last platinum egg, as Wildmutt. It wasn't hard to find once Ken started getting even relatively close to it. Because the last egg was located at the top of an absolutely massive ice mountain. Courtesy of Todoroki. How did I not notice this before? Ken wondered to himself as he stared up at the mountain that looked like a giant ice spear, piercing the sky. Welp, better start climbing, not much time left. Ken approached the base of the mountain, dug his claws into the ice, and started climbing up the mountain as quick as he could. It took him 7 whole minutes of climbing to see the top. And there, at the very tip of the mountain, was the platinum egg. Ken grinned as he quickly approached the top, moving closer and closer to the top. And as he reached the summit, smash! Kiba burst out of the mountain, causing the summit to explode as she grabbed the egg. Rah! Ken screamed in fear as Kiba bursting out of the mountain caused him to go flying away from the mountain, and now he was falling towards the ground. And to make things worse, BRRRRR. 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 BRRRR. In a flash of red, Ken turned back into his normal form and was now plummeting miles towards the ground. Ah ha ah! Ken screamed as he fell towards the ground, seemingly to his death. Only to be snapped up by a grim griffin that had been standing by to save anyone who fell off. Oh! Ken gave a massive sigh of relief. He'd be disappointed he lost the egg if he wasn't too glad about not dying. Alright, everyone. Mina announced using drones. Time is up. Everyone comes back, let's count the eggs. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. After about half an hour, all the kids finally made it back to the backyard, and they all dumped their eggs in their team's basket. You got 3 platinum eggs. Nara shouted in shock, looking at Ken and Otoko's basket. Hee hee. Ken laughed, taking the moment to gloat. Yep. Wildmutt's nose has never been more useful. Let me find all 4 of them. And I would have gotten the last one if Kiba hadn't come out of nowhere and swiped it. Almost killing me in the process. Kiba rolled her eyes. As if Caretaker would challenge us to climb a mountain and not have something in place to save us, should we fall? And I didn't even know you were there in the first place. Alright everyone, time to count the eggs. Mina said. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. After a small counting period, it was time to announce the results. Alrighty then. Time to announce the results. Mina shouted. All the participants were lined up in front of her, looking at her with anticipation. And the winners are Ken and Otoko. Mina announced. Yes. Ken shouted at the top of his lungs, feelings of relief, joy, and exuberance filled him in massive quantities, making him feel lighter than air. We did it. It worked. My plan worked. Ha ha ha. Yes. Almost everyone else was not feeling that same, with feelings of disappointment going all around. Curses. Kiba pouted before looking to Eri. My apologies, little sister, it appears I did lead us to victory. It's okay. Eri managed a slight smile, grabbing Kiba's hands to try and comfort her. We did our best, and you looked really cool climbing that mountain. I'm sorry I slowed you down. Kyoku apologized to her partner. You might have won if it wasn't for me. Nonsense. I wouldn't have a victory if it meant hurting you. Shiroku told her, rubbing her head. And besides, Ken had 3 platinum eggs, I doubt we would have won. Ugh, sorry my plans didn't really work out, Nara said to Kota, who looked mildly annoyed. Hey, it's fine, I didn't really think we were gonna win anyway. Not after he got 3 platinum eggs. Kota remarked. Meanwhile, Yonda was petting a saddened Sansan. Don't be upset, sister. Ken had a great advantage, and good strategy, not much could have been done. We tried our best, and that's what matters. I'm sure we can beat him in the next competition. Kyosei felt a profound sense of disappointment, and he felt Fu reassure him mentally. Kei on the other hand seemed unaffected and was giving Ken a round of applause. Good work, Ken and Otoko. Congratulations. Shoji came over and gave them both a trophy, awarding them for their victory. Ken held his trophy up proudly, while Otoko just went the flow. Don't worry, kids.
We still have way more stuff to do, Mina told them. After a short break, we'll be moving on to the next competition. Plus Ultra. Chapter 114, Field Day Part 5. Alright, everyone. Time for the last big event, Mina announced to everyone. The sun was starting to set, and in a few hours, the field day would come to an end. Now everyone. It's time for the ultimate race, Mina said, before gesturing over to the starting line she'd set up. At the starting line were 5 contestants. Ida, Achiko, Shiruku, Kiba, and Nara, all looking ready and rearing to go. The rules are simple: stay within the track, and don't attack any of the other racers, Mina explained. So without further ado, racers, ready. Nara slammed down on her Omnitrix and turned into XLR8. Set. Mina continued. Full cowling, 15%. Achiko said, activating One for All. Go! Mina shouted. Vroom! Immediately, all the racers began running, going through the first part of the racecourse, a large open stretch of land that lead into the forest. Nara had a head start, with Kiba behind her, Ida behind her, and Achiko and Shiruku behind him. For a few seconds, it looked like Nara was gonna get a large head start. Kaboom! Until she ran right over a mine. Ah! Nara shouted as the mine blew her back, sending her flying onto her side. Ow wow! And Nara's hit the first obstacle. The minefield, Mina announced over the loudspeaker. Try and keep from getting blown up, okay guys? Ha! As if mines would stop me. Kiba shouted as she jumped up high into the air, jumping over half the field, before landing in the middle of it. Kaboom! Ah ha ha ha! Kiba said as she jumped out of the smoke cloud that came from the explosion, completely unfazed by it. Such weak explosions can't touch the Queen of Eternal Darkness. As Kiba was jumping over the minefield, Nara had gotten back up, and Ida was also approaching the minefield. Darn it! I'll just have to try and move around the mines, Nara thought, looking down at the field for buried mines, before maneuvering around them, as quickly but cautiously as she could, with Ida doing the same. Now Achiko and Shiruku approached the minefield, and both of them already had a strategy in mind. Achiko jumped up, touching herself and taking away her gravity, allowing herself to float over the minefield, quickly moving past Nara and Ida, who had to maneuver around the mines. Meanwhile, Shiruku just jumped up as much as she could, before turning around midair and shooting a web at one of the trees in the distance, before pulling herself over to those trees on her web line, and rushing past Ida, Nara, and Achiko as she did so. Back with Kiba, she had made it into the forest and had big lead on everyone else. She kept running straight, until a tree got in her way, and then she swerved to the right. Then she stepped on something, tripped, and fell on her face. Pa! Kiba grunted as she got a mouthful of grass. What the heck? She tried getting up, only to find that her foot was stuck on something. One of Mineta's balls. Looks like Lady K has gotten to the second part of the course, Mina announced. The sticky forest. We've scattered a bunch of sticky traps around the forest, so be careful. Ugh! Kiba groaned as she began to try and pull the ball off her foot. Meanwhile, Shiruku had reached the forest and clung to a tree, before jumping to the next one, going from tree to tree and avoiding the ground, which was covered in patches of Mineta's balls. Looks like Shiruku's going the high route. But let's see if she can avoid the obstacles we placed up there, Mina commented. As Shiruku jumped to the next tree, she noticed a tape trap up ahead, lines of tape wrapped around 2 trees that would keep her from going forward. She looked around for another route, only to find a lot more tape traps around her, and some of the trees also had patches of Mineta's balls on them. While Shiruku was looking for a way forward, Achiko made it into the forest and was running through it as fast as she could, while scanning for Mineta's balls. She made it to a tape trap and jumped over it. However, she realized that in itself was a trap, as she found herself about to land on some of Mineta's balls. Achiko touched herself, stopping herself in the air before she touched the balls, gliding over them, before returning herself to normal gravity, and continuing to run through the forest. Meanwhile, Kiba had finally gotten that ball off of her and continued to run forward. This time when a tree got in her way, instead of going around it into a trap, she just ran through the tree, breaking it into splinters as she went on without slowing. At least until she stepped on the patch of balls that was behind it and tripped again. Curses! Curses! Kiba shouted. Oh, looks like Lady Kiba having some trouble, Mina commented. But it looks like Ida and Nara have finally reached the forest. Let's see if these two can catch up. Man, never thought I'd be telling Ida to catch up. The landmines were quite the impediment to my speed as Shido. Ida shouted as he started running through the forest, with Nara in front of him, as the two moved at a fast, but not super fast speed, through the forest, cautiously avoiding the obstacles in the forest. Meanwhile, Shiruku had found her way forward, jumping around from the bases of the trees, sometimes moving to the ground every time some tape or balls got in her way, swiftly moving through the forest. Alright, it looks like Shiruku is taking the lead with some masterful footwork. All 6 of them. Mina commented. Achiko is going a bit slower, that zero-G quirk of hers letting her get past a lot of the traps, but Kiba's on her tail. She's finally getting the groove of avoiding the traps. Nara and Ida are gaining slowly. Looks like the traps aren't slowing them down as much as the mines did. Let's see how things play out, as Shiruku is approaching the next obstacle. Shiruku jumped out of the forest, and to the entrance of a giant maze, with 4 different entrances. Welcome to the Great Maze. Try and get through it as fast as you can. But remember, you have to stay on the track. Which doesn't include going over the maze. Mina reminded the contestants. Shiruku frowned and she was about to run into the maze, but then she stopped, as an idea came to her. And so she stood to the side and waited. Looks like Shiruku's not going in yet. Wonder what she's thinking? Mina asked. Well, whatever it is, it better be good, because she's about to lose her lead as Uraraka's approaching maze with Kiba not far behind. Achiko ran out of the forest and stopped for a second to look at Shiruku, who just smiled at her. What are you doing? Waiting. Shiruku simply responded, turning her head to the forest. Ah, here she comes. And Kiba came running out of the forest. She stopped for a moment to look at all 4 paths, before taking the one on the inner right. But instead of taking a turning right and following the path, she kept going straight. Smash! 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 Kiba just ran right through the walls of the maze, destroying them as she kept on going. There we go, Shiruku said, before turning to Achiko. Shall we? Achiko ran forward, following Kiba, with Shiruku going behind her. We probably should have thought of that, Mina commented. Whoops. However, as Shiruku passed one of the walls Kiba destroyed, she then proceeded to stop and web it up, meaning that the path was no longer usable to Nara or Ida. Oh, but it looks Shiruku is sealing off the path, Mina noted. Showing no mercy to Ida or Nara. Ag! Nara shouted in annoyance, as she still moved through the forest, hearing about what just happened and getting very, very irritated at the sneaky spider girl. Sorry Nara, but I can't let you or Ida catch up. Shiruku thought as she continued through the maze, webbing up the walls as she went, while Achiko and Kiba went through the maze without issue. Well, thanks to Kiba. Achiko, and Shiruku have already made it to the next obstacle. Mina said. At the same time, Nara's made it to the maze, with Ida not far behind. Nara quickly dashed into the maze and started running as fast as possible. At this point, trying to figure out which path led where would slow her down, so she'd just run through the maze as fast as possible. Ida soon followed behind her, using the same strategy. Meanwhile, Kiba, Achiko, and Shiruku had arrived at a massive field that was covered in ice. Behold the ice field. Mina announced. Careful not to slip. Kiba paid no attention to this warning and attempted to jump over the field. She made it about a quarter of the way, before landing on the ice, cracking it, and causing her to slip, fall on her face, slid forward until she slipped onto a more fragile piece of ice, which broke underneath her and dropped her into a pit. Curses! Kiba cried as he fell into a deep hole, filled with Mineta's balls. Not again. Sorry Lady K, can't brute force everything, Mina said. Achiko did what she normally did, touched herself, and started floating over the whole thing. Shruko meanwhile, had a different approach. Shink! She stabbed one of her long pointy legs into the ice, and stuck to it, getting a firm footing on the ice, before moving onto it, doing the same thing with each leg as she moved, making it impossible for her to slip. Half a minute later, Nara finished getting through the maze and looked at the long stretch of ice in front of her. If she tried just running over it, she'd end up in a hole, like Kiba. So she thought about it for a few seconds, and then came up with an idea. Nara then began to run in a circle. Oh, looks like Nara has a plan. Mina commented. It'd better work because Shiruku and Achiko are already almost past the ice field. Shiruku's in first place, and gaining a pretty big lead. Wonder what'll happen when Lady K climbed out of the hole? You'll find out right now. Kiba cried as she jumped out of the hole, with one of Mineta's balls attached to each foot. She landed on the ice, and the two balls stuck to the icy ground, keeping her from slipping. Kiba then started moving forward, using the balls to keep footing. Ah ha ha ha. Your attempts to trap me have only made me stronger. Behold my endless tenacity. Lady K has found her way. Fantastic, my lady. Mina commented. And it looks like Ida is approaching the ice. Ida had finally ran through the maze, and approached the ice, stopping before he stepped foot on it. After looking around, he sees Nara still running in circles, at this point moving so fast she was just an unseeable blur. I see. Ida said, realizing what Nara was doing, before coming up with his own strategy. Vroom! Ida crouched down and started revving his engines, getting ready to go as fast as he could. Recipro burst. Whoosh! Ida then ran across the ice at max speed, using the ice to make him move even faster as he sped through the icy field. He ran over a pitfall, but by the time the ice crumbled, Ida was already past it. He was moving so quickly that none of the pits could catch him in time. Vroom! And then, Nara suddenly slingshot herself across the field, using the momentum she had built up to do the same thing Ida did, and run across the field so fast none of the pitfalls could trap her. Whoa! Ida and Nara have gone from dead last to first and gaining a massive lead. Mina shouted in excitement. Nara rushed past Ida, as both of them ran past the other contestants, leaving them in the dust, as both of them soon cleared the ice field, and moved onto the path towards the next obstacle. I knew something like this would happen. Shiruku frowned, as she crawled off the ice field and ran after Ida and Nara. Hopefully, the next obstacle slows them down a bit more. Alright, Nara and Ida have already made it to the next obstacle, the Lake of Pain. Mina announced dramatically. Nara and Ida made it to a huge lake that was filled with mines, as well as 3 Seafilongs waiting for them to arrive. The two went full speed, running on top of the water, trying to get through the lake. Thankfully, the mines here were larger and more spaced out, meaning that the two of them had an easier time running around them. All the Feilongs tried to rush at them, but they were so fast they couldn't reach them, and the two of them had already run across the lake. And they're both already over the lake. Before Shiruku could even get to it. Mina shouted. Nara in first place, with Ida not too far behind. And they are about to get to the final obstacle. Will these two get to the finish line before the others can even hang on? Suddenly, Nara's Omnitrix began to turn flash red. Brrrr. No! Nara groaned as she forced herself to slow down, digging her ball-like feet into the dirt, skidding into the ground as she started to slow. Brrrr. 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 In a flash of red, Nara had returned to her normal form, and her forward momentum caused her to fly forward and land on her face. Ow wow. Nara groaned as her face impacted the dirt. Meanwhile, Ida began to slow down, as his engines overheated and shut down. Ida slowed to a stop, not too far away from Nara, as his quirk went on cooldown. Unfortunate. I had hoped I could have made it through the last obstacle before this happened. Ugh, if Shiruku hadn't made me go through that stupid maze I could have one. Nara complained as she pulled herself off the ground. Looks like their quirks gave out before they could reach the end. Mina said. And now both of them will have to go through the next obstacle, without any help from their quirks? Speaking of that next obstacle, introducing the hill. Both Ida and Nara stood at the base of a large, steep hill. And they could see the finish line over at the top. It may have looked like a normal hill, but both Ida and Nara knew it had to be filled with traps. Nara took a deep breath and started running up the hill, with Ida watching from behind. She made it about 7 feet before. Spring! Ah! Nara screamed as suddenly, a hidden springboard popped up and launched her into the air. Nara hit the ground, back at the base of the hill, hurting her back quite a bit. Ow wow wow. Ouch! Mina grimaced. That looked like it hurt. Be careful, this hill will have you going back down to the bottom over and over again. With traps invisible to the naked eye. Are you okay? Ida asked Nara, giving her a hand and helping her off the ground. I'll be fine, Nara reassured him. Looks like Shiruku's at the lake. And Achiko and Kiba have gotten to the end of the icy path. Mina announced. Back at the lake, Shiruku had reached the edge and was thinking about how she could get over this. Rah-ha! One of the felons noticed her and let out a roar, getting the attention of the other two, causing all 3 of them to start swimming towards her. Shiruku quickly got an idea and jumped up towards them before turning midair and firing a web at them. The web line hit the forehead of the one in the center, and Shiruku pulled herself towards it. She landed on its forehead, and immediately, it started trying to shake her off, wagging its head around to try and throw her, but Shiruku stuck to its head, waiting for just the right moment. Then, when it flicked its head upwards, Shiruku jumped at the same time, sending her flying high up into the sky. From there, Shiruku shot a web line at a tree on the other end of the lake and started reeling herself towards it. Looks like Shiruku flew over that lake in no time. Mina commented. I wonder how Uraraka and Lady K are gonna deal with it though. While Shiruku was landing at the end of the lake, Achiko and Kiba approached the other side. Kiba without hesitation jumped into the lake and started swimming, with Achiko following behind her, doing the exact same thing. Looks like these two are gonna be the only ones to actually go into the lake. Mina said. Let's see how well they do. The two easily swam around the mines, but the real problem came as the felons approached. One rushed Kiba and tried to headbutt her. Its options were limited as Yami had given them strict commands on what kind of attacks they could and couldn't use. But Kiba swam down and dodged it. That Phylong turned and dived after her, pursuing her under the water. Kiba kept swimming forward as the Phylong chased her, and then the other Phylong comes in and cuts off her path, standing in her way. So in response, Kiba burst upwards, jumping out of the water like a dolphin and trying to go over the Phylong. But the Phylong sifted its body, and tail slapped Kiba out of the air and knocking her back to the beginning of the lake. Achiko meanwhile was swimming away from the one Phylong that was chasing her and gaining 18. Full cowling. Akiko shouted, increasing her power, as she shot away from the Phylong. While that was happening, Nara and Ida were continuing to try and climb the hill, with very little success. Nara made it a quarter way up the hill, when suddenly, a few feet ahead of her, a device popped out of the hill and shot down a stream of water towards Nara. Wait! Aha! Nara screamed, as the water swept her off her feet, and brought her back down the hill with it. Oh come on! Ida, who was further down the hill, suddenly stepped on some ground that had been slicked with a soapy liquid, and tripped, causing him to roll all the way back down to the base of the hill. Looks like Nara and Ida are still struggling to make progress, but Shiruku is approaching the hill now. Let's see if she does any better, Mina said. Shiruku ran up to the hill and started going up, decreasing her speed, and moving cautiously. Boing! The spider girl had stepped on a hidden springboard, which sprang out of the ground and tried to toss her off the hill, but she just stuck to the board, and when it stopped springing, she jumped off it and continued going up,
She kept going, and ended up stepping on a slippy patch. She slipped down a little bit, but then she just stuck to the ground and kept herself from going any further down, before continuing on, and moving around the slippery part of the hill. Oh, that spider stickiness is letting her climb up the hill like it's nothing. Mina shouted. Will she be the one? Can she win it all? Oh. Looks like Uraraka is coming up. But Shiruku is already halfway up the hill. Achiko ran up to the hill and looked up. Shiruku was almost already halfway up. There was no way for her to catch up by simply going up the hill. She'd have to think outside the box. Achiko took a few seconds to think of a plan, looking around, before her eyes landed on a nearby tree. Quickly she ran over to it, and touched it, taking away its gravity, before she began to lift. Grrrrrrrrrr. Raff. Achiko lifted the tree out of the ground, and threw it into the air, sending it flying high up into the air, sending it higher than the hill itself. Then, Achiko touched herself, taking away her own gravity, before jumping up towards the tree. Uraraka flipped in mid-air, positioning herself so her feet landed on the tree. Shooting star. Achiko then launched herself off the tree as hard as she could, sending the tree flying back, and her flying forward, towards the top of the hill. Oh my goodness! Achiko just flew over the hill, and is heading towards the finish line. Mina shouted. Shiruku looked up at Achiko, who was flying towards the finish line, and panicked. It was all or nothing, so she jumped up, and shot a web line at one of the poles holding up the checkered banner over the finish line, and stared, reeling herself in. It's so close. Achiko and Shiruku are neck and neck. But who's gonna make it there first? Mina screamed in excitement. The two girls kept moving towards the finish line, getting closer and closer, with neither one gaining the edge over the other, until slunk. One of the traps activated. A wall popped out of the ground, right in front of Shiruku's path, stopping her progress, and allowing Achiko to shoot ahead, and fly past through the finish line. She did it! Achiko Uraraka has won the race, landing herself in first place. Mina shouted excitedly. Congratulations, girl! You've done your class proud. Phew! Achiko let out a breath she'd been holding, before touching her fingertips together. Release! Ugh! Shiruku groaned with disappointment as she made her way to the finish line. In second place is Shiruku, Mina announced. Don't look too down, Spider Girl. Second place ain't bad when you look at your competition. This didn't seem to cheer Shiruku up much, as she still held her head down with disappointment, and Achiko gave her a pat on the head and a sympathetic smile. You almost had me there. Had that wall not shown up, who knows what would have happened? Achiko reassured her. And hey, I think Izuku will be proud of your quick thinking. Well, with first and second place decided, let's see who's gonna get that bronze medal. Mina said. Let's see how Lady K is dash. Slam! Suddenly, a tree came crashing down a few yards in front of Shiruku and Achiko, with Kiba on top of it. Aha! It worked! Kiba cheered as she hopped off the tree, blood dripping from her hands and mouth. Even if I can't get first, I refuse to be in last. And Lady K takes third. With an incredible feat of strength, Lady K seems to have thrown a tree, and rode it all the way to the finish line. Mina explained. Also, what's up with the blood? Well, I couldn't do something like this at little over half my strength now, could I? Kiba stated. So I had to hunt a deer that had wandered into the racetrack, and drink its blood to regain my power. Wow! Brutal as heck, Lady K, Mina commented. Well, now with only 2 contestants left, I wonder who will make it to 4th place. Ida and Nara kept trying to make it up the hill, sliding down many times, before eventually, Ida made it up, and crossed the finish line. And Ida gets 4th place. Mina shouted. And with that, the race is over. Brrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Ugh. Nara let out a groan that was full of exhaustion and disappointment as she flopped to the ground halfway up the hill. Alright, everyone. Make your way back to the backyard, and let's wrap this up. Minette explained. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. By the time everyone made it back, night had fallen, and 1A had taken the time to set up for the next event. Blankets were placed around the backyard, and dinner had been placed on tables. But before that, they had to wrap up the race. Alright. Time for the awards. Mina said. Achiko, Shiruku, and Kiba stood on 3 podiums, with Achiko on the highest one, Shiruku on the second highest, and Kiba on the lowest. Shoji came forward, with a gold trophy, and 2 medals. 1 silver, 1 bronze. The multi-armed boy gifted the trophy to Achiko while giving the silver medal to Shiruku, and the bronze one to Kiba. Congrats to Uraraka, Shiruku, and Kiba. Mina said as everyone gave them a round of applause. Meanwhile, on the side, Kaminari walked up to Ida. You okay, man? I'm fine, Kaminari. Thank you for your concern. Ida answered. Although I am slightly frustrated, I can use this frustration as motivation to improve myself further. Yeah, that's the spirit, man. Kaminari said, patting him on the back. Plus ultra. Nara on the other hand was not taking her loss quite as well and clapped with a disappointed scowl on her face. Hey, you gonna be okay? Ken asked her genuinely. I'll be fine, Nara mumbled, before letting out a long sigh. Just a little sore about losing a race while being the fastest one there. And I could have won if Shiruku didn't make me go through that maze. Yeah, well she wanted to win. Ken shrugged. But hey, at least you're still number 1 in the classroom, so there's that. You're still top nerd. And you're still number 1 loser, Nara smirked, her mood picking up a bit. There she is. I was worried I'd have to be nice to you for a whole day. Ken fake gagged. Ugh. Just saying it sounds wrong. Doofus. Nara chuckled while rolling her eyes, with a smirk on her face. Well, with that over, it's time for the final event. The fireworks show. Mina shouted. Everyone get a plate. And pick a blanket. And get ready for the show. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Achiko sat down on her blanket, her legs crossed with a plate of curry and rice beside her, looking up at the night sky. After everyone had gotten their food, they all chose their blankets, sitting in groups, all except for Achiko, who sat alone, as curiously no one chose to sit next to her. Until Izuku came up to her, with a nervous expression on his face. Most of the other blankets were full and I noticed you were alone. So is it okay if I dash? Of course. Achiko answered, flashing him a smile. More than enough room after all. Thank you, Izuku told her, before sitting down, with his bowl of katsudon. The two sat in silence for a little bit, eating their food together, and waiting for the show to start. Congratulations by the way, Izuku said after a while. On your victory, that is. Thanks. Achiko smiled proudly, blushing slightly as well. Honestly, it's all thanks to Shiruku. If she hadn't done everything she did during the maze part, I wouldn't have been able to win. Yeah, I'm really proud of all the ideas she came up with during that race. Even if she only got second place, I'm glad she walked away with a medal. Izuku said, with a huge smile on his face. Achiko stared at him for a second. In awe of the expression on his face. The happiness at seeing his daughter doing so well, the pride he felt in seeing all his efforts in allowing her to grow pay off. It was a look that said a lot about Izuku. How happy he was to watch someone succeed, and how much it meant to him that he got to help that person. It was an amazing look, in Achiko's opinion. And one she wanted to see much more of. Boom! The fireworks started, and Achiko was snapped out of her trance by the light and loud noise. Ha! Izuku looked at her, seeing that Achiko had a dazed and slightly confused expression. Achiko, are you okay? Me?
Yeah.
Achiko stuttered, as her face turned red when she realized that she'd been staring at Izuku for quite a while.
I'm fine.
Hey, look at the fireworks.
Let's pay attention to those.
Izuku looked at her for a few more seconds, trying to see if she'd be concerned, before shrugging it off, and looking up at the fireworks with her. And thus, the field day had concluded, with a burst of light and color exploding in the night sky, signaling its end.
That will be it for this part.
I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 22.
If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.